Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we will be unboxing the Get Yeti January 2025 card kit by Simon Stamp and creating 5 different card projects using the pattern papers that are provided in the kit. Well, I will do a quick unboxing and then we can dive into our card projects. Usually, I would just create one card per video, but since we are almost towards the end of Jan, I wanted to share as many possible cards as I could using the contents in this beautiful kit. I decided to create 5 cards and show you how I use up the pattern papers in my card kit. These are really easy cards to put together. The best part about using contents of a card kit are that all of the contents coordinate with each other. So there's very little that you would need from your crafty stash, which may be like, say, colors or a couple of other dyes. Before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Before we start creating, let us first take a look at the Get Yeti card kit. Well, I can't believe we are already at 2025 and I'm here unboxing the first card kit of the year. Now, this card kit consists of a very adorable stamp set, an embossing folder. We have a little coordinating die, some beautiful pattern papers, which I will be using to create our card projects today, and not one, not two, but 5 sheets of cardstocks. Let us first take a look at this beautiful 6x8 stamp set. This is the Get Yeti stamp. Now, this one is perfect if you want to create beautiful wintry scenes featuring everyone's favorite mythical snow loving friend, our little Yeti. The stamp includes 2 cheerful Yeti images. We have a snowman, we have mountains, trees, a little cupcakes, cozy hot beverages, and some winter accessories and balloons, which would be perfect to create beautiful scenes on your card front. These would be ideal for your winter themed or holiday themed card projects. We also have a bunch of beautiful sentiments on this. We have happy birthday, there's nobody like you, get Yeti to celebrate your birthday, and so on. Now, the kit includes a small die set, which is the Get Yeti, and the balloon die set, which cuts out this little Yeti figure that is on the stamp. You can also find coordinating dies, which, well, is not part of the card kit but can be bought separately. Next, we have the illuminated Jack's embossing folder. This is a beautiful 3D embossing folder which will add a very playful and symmetrical pattern to your card panels. This has repeating images of the jacks from the classic game of jacks, featuring a starburst-like shape. Well, you could consider this also like snowflake patterns, which is what I will be using it for to create our winter themed card projects. I think this pattern would be perfect for blackout techniques as well. We also have a little Doodlebug Yeti sticker. All you have to do is peel out this little Yeti and stick it on your card projects. Well, it also says that this is dishwasher safe, so I'm assuming you could also add these on your coffee mugs or tumblers. I usually add these on my laptop. How would you add these stickers? Well, included in the kit is a little action wobble which you can use to pop up your little focal point images on your card front. Next, we have a sheet of the Simon Says Stamp Everyday Easy Sentiment Strips. These are the everyday sentiments that you could use on your card projects, which include "You're the best," "Thank you," "Happy birthday," "Here for you," "Love you," "Miss you." Well, Simon Says Stamp has coordinating dies for these easy sentiment strips. It's not part of the kit but can be bought separately. This makes my work so much more easier. Let's take a look at the pattern papers that are included in the kit. We have 12 double-sided sheets of Photoplay Yeti for Winter 6x6-inch pattern papers. Now that we have 2 sheets of each of those patterns, we don't have to, well, sacrifice all of those beautiful images on the other side of the paper. These papers include adorable Yeti characters and playful symbols. All of these are in a cool wintry color scheme of blue, white, cream, and reds. The images include mountains, snowflakes, whimsical spirals, trees, hot cocoa, sleds, and Yetis, which perfectly coordinate with the images in the Get Yeti stamp set. I had so much fun using these pattern papers to create all of our cards today. Also included in the card kit is an A2 size envelope by Simon Says Stamp. This looks like it's in the navy blue color. For the cardstocks that are available in the kit, we have a beautiful red color cardstock and a light blue shade of cardstock. We also have two sheets of the Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock and a beautiful holographic, the silver holographic lava cardstock, again by Simon System. That was all the contents in the Simon System January 2025 Get Yeti card kit. Now let's take a look at the cards that we will be creating using the contents of the kit. Off camera, I stamped all of these images from the Get Yeti stamp set onto Nina Solar White cardstock using my Memento black ink, and that's because I planned on using my alcohol markers to color all of these images. Once I stamped the images, I used the Brothers Canon cut machine to cut out all of these images since I didn't have the coordinating dies with me. And then I colored them using my Spectrum Noir tri-blend markers. Now, if you see the Yeti here, he has a small little slit in his hands that was created by the die that was part of the kit. You could add any of those little images in between his hands. You could add the little coffee mug, the cupcake, little ball, balloon, or any of those tiny little images that we've stamped. I like to store all of these colored images in a container that is easily accessible when I need to create my focal point for the card front. For card number one, I will be using this pattern paper which has the Yeti image that says stay cool. I will also be cutting out the strip which says you are snow awesome, and that'll be the sentiment on our card front. I cut out all the elements, and before adhering them onto an A2 size card panel, I decided to add the beautiful embossed pattern using the illuminated Jack's embossing folder on my white panel. I love the texture that this embossing folder gives to my card panels. Well, using some foam tape, I adhered the main focal point onto the embossed panel. I cut the sentiment strip that says, "You are snow awesome," so that I could fit it perfectly onto our card front. Using some liquid glue, I adhered the sentiments over the focal point image. We could then add this entire panel onto a top folding A2 size card base, and we could call this card done. Now, with all that texture and bump on the embossed panel, I would suggest using a strong liquid glue or some strong foam tape or double-sided tape to adhere this panel onto your card base. Now that was card number one for you guys. All I did here was cut out pieces of the pattern paper to create a beautiful card front. How easy and quick was that to create? Moving on to card number two, I will be using this beautiful, very light blue colored pattern paper with tiny snow-like markings on it. I cut a panel to be 4 by 5 and quarter, which is slightly smaller than an A2 size card base, and then I sandwiched this paper between my embossing folder and then ran it through my die cut machine. I love the texture on this card, especially with that little white snowflake splatters all over the panel. Now I wanted to create a snowbank effect so that I could add the little Yeti riding down the sled, which would be the focal point of this card. I used a white sheet of cardstock and used the hills die by Cat Scrappiness to create my hill. Well, this die cut gave me two hills, so I will be creating two cards simultaneously. I adhered one of those hills to my embossed background panel, and while the glue dried, I started to work on my third card, which again was very simple to assemble. For this card, I have this gorgeous pattern paper with the little trees and wintertime etched on it. I placed my hill slope and cut the entire panel to be 4 by 5 and quarter inches. I placed my focal point, which is this Yeti, which would be on the left hand corner of this card panel. I thought that I would turn this into a birthday card using the Get Yeti to celebrate your birthday sentiment. Well, I thought instead of adding the balloons or coffee mug or any other accessory, it would be fun to add a tree between his hands that would be perfect as a birthday present. I then stamped the sentiment using VersaFine Onyx Black ink directly onto the snowbank, and then for the focal point, I added some foam tape, and well, with that, we can call this card done. Do note that since I had colored all of these images beforehand, it was really easy to create these card projects in very little time. If I were to create these cards individually and color and stamp those images one by one, it would have definitely taken me forever, and that would definitely be one card per video project. Moving back to our second card, now that the hill was completely dry, I went ahead and first stamped the sentiment which says, "Get a Yeti for a great day," using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which I thought matched perfectly with the Yeti sledding down the hill slope. And for this focal point, I used foam tape to pop him up. I also added little snowballs as accessories near my sentiment using some liquid glue. If you'd like to see me coloring all of these little images in real time, I will be uploading a video soon which will be part of the real time coloring series. Don't forget to check that out. I will leave a link to that series in the description box below. Moving on to card number 4, I wanted to create a little framed background. I started off with this beautiful plaid pattern paper, and here instead of using the Yetis, I decided to use the little snowmen. Well, again, we will be creating a snowbank for our little frame scene. I used the frame die again by Cat Scrappiness to create my frame. Before adhering the snowman onto the card front, I stamped the sentiment which says, "There's nobody like you," onto the snowbank. Well, this card would be perfect for your friends or your buddies for this Valentine's. I then matted this frame onto the same light blue colored pattern paper before adhering it onto an A2 size card base. Well, that's the advantage of having two sheets of the same pattern paper. You're able to use it on two different card projects. I adhered the little snowman using some liquid glue. You could also use some foam tape to pop them up. I also added a little heart in between my snowmen. This is also part of the Get Yeti stamp set, which I stamped and cut using my brother's Canon cut. And I adhered it between the snowmen using liquid glue. And well, here's a look at the finished card. I definitely love how this card turned out, and I like the frame that the frame die gave to this card front. From the light blues and creams, let's move on to something bright and create our fifth and final card. This card includes layering up of pattern papers with a beautiful Yeti focal point and sentiment strip from the Simon Says stamp Everyday Easy Sentiment Strips. I started by cutting out a frame using the Cat Scrappiness frame die, which would be the base for my focal point. Now these are nested frame dies, so I took the next larger frame and die cut using a white piece of cardstock. This white panel will tone down all of that bright red from our card front. I use the illuminated Jack's embossing folder on my white panel to add some texture. Now all we have to do is layer all of these pieces together to create a beautiful card front. I cut the red pattern paper which has the coffee mugs on it to be 5 by 4 1 quarter, which is slightly smaller than an A2 size card base. Next, I adhered the embossed white panel onto this red sheet of pattern paper. My third layer is this beautiful striped pattern paper which reminds me of candy canes but with a hint of blue. I adhered this using some foam tape for an extra dimension. Now that all of my panels are adhered over one another, I will place my focal point, which is this cute and adorable little Yeti, towards the top of the striped panel. Now this is the die cut Yeti which has a slit in his hand. I will place a little heart between his hands. For my sentiment, I'm using the You Have a Kind Heart sentiment strip, which I die cut using the coordinating die from the Everyday Easy sentiment strip. I thought it would match perfectly with the heart in our Yeti's hand. I love to have such sets where one sheet of sentiments has so many different varieties of sentiments that I can use on my card fronts. Well, I matted the sentiment strip over a piece of black cardstock before placing it onto the panel. I also thought that the sentiment strip was way too white for this beautiful color on our background, so I used my red ink blending brush and lightly blended over the strip without adding any extra color to it. Here's a look at the finished card. I love how beautiful it turned out and how easy it was to create. All we did was layered a beautiful pattern paper and added a focal point and a little sentiment strip, and we could call this card done. Well, let us now take a closer look at all the 5 cards that we created today. I love how beautiful and unique all of these cards look. Even though I have used the same set of pattern papers on and the same stamp set for all my focal points, All of these cards definitely look different and, well, so versatile. The coordinating sentiments for each of these cards are absolutely perfect. This could definitely be given as a pack of cards or maybe a set of cards to your loved ones as a gift. From simple layering up of pattern papers to beautiful embossed backgrounds, simple colored focal points, and beautiful coordinating sentiments. I love the variety of contents that are part of this January 2025 Get Yeti card kit by Simon System. Well, I had so much fun creating all of these card projects, and I hope you had fun watching the video. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be linked down in the description box below. Note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Well, I'm not sure if the January kit is still available, but all of the products are sold separately. So I'll be linking each of the products, not just what I used to create these cards, but also every content that was available in the kit. You can find the links down in the description box and also on my blog post. I will be back with another video, which will be part of the real time coloring series, where I show you how I colored all of these beautiful Yeti and snowman images. Stay tuned for that. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be creating a very clean and simple card background using some pretty glittery bows. I wanted to show you that a little die cut piece is not just meant to be focal point on your card fronts, but we can also use them to create beautiful backgrounds. Before we take a look at the card and the supplies that I used to create the card, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. I will be using the Pretty Bows wafer dies and the new and exclusive Simon Says Bubblegum Pink Glitter Cardstock. Now, both of these products were part of the Simon Says Tweet Friend March 2025 card kit. The Pretty Bows die set includes 5 wafer-thin dies, each having a unique design. You could use these as standalone embellishments, or you could also mix and match them and layer them up to create your own layered focal point. The bubblegum glitter pink cardstock is 105-pound heavyweight cardstock, and well, this is a non-shedding glitter paper. So, well, we will be using that to create our die cut focal point, but these would also be perfect to cut out our sentiments too. Now, since I was creating my card background using the bows, I used all 5 of the bows and cut it out using the pink bubblegum glitter cardstock. Now, I like to use my Spellbinder's Platinum 6 die cutting machine for this, and even though the bows were really thin and had a very intricate and detailed design, I love how beautifully it managed to cut out even the thinner bows. Now, if you don't have glitter cardstock, you could use any pink cardstock or, well, any colored cardstock of your choice and die cut the bows. And then you can add some silver shimmer spray or use any glitter brush pen to create the sparkle effect. Now, for usually for my cards, I like to use my Spectrum Noir glitter brush pen that gives an amazing shine to my die cut pieces. Now, you could also use different colored cardstocks and layer up these bows. That would definitely give a very different and unique look to your cards. Now that my die cuts are ready, it's time to assemble these onto our background panel. I decided to keep my card pretty simple and add these bows on a plain white card panel instead of using any embossed background or a colorful cardstock. I cut this panel to be 4 by 5¼ inches, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. Now, before we stick all of these little bows, I wanted to make sure that I get the placement right and also have enough space in between those bows to stamp my sentiment. Well, if you don't want to stamp your sentiment, you could also use a sentiment strip or a die cut sentiment. I decided to stamp the sentiment, for which I will be using the Graceful Flowers stamp set, which has some really beautiful sentiments. I really love the font on these. I will be stamping Wishing You the Best sentiment nestled between these die cut bows. I took the panel and placed it into my stamping tool. You will notice that the bows are still in place. Well, they are not stuck yet. This will be a guide for me to know where I need to stamp my sentiment and get the spacing right. I like to use my grid transparency sheet by Simon's Stamp to make sure that the sentiment is stamped in a straight line and is perfectly aligned to the card front. Once I get the position of the sentiment right, I will remove the grid transparency sheet and the die cut pieces, and using the VersaFine Onyx black ink, I will stamp my sentiment. Even a clean and simple card needs some splatters. So, after stamping my sentiment, I took the panel to my splatter box and added some black watercolor splatters all over the panel. I did cover my sentiment with a scrap piece of paper. Well, after I did the black, I decided to add the slightest hint of pink as well. Well, not as much as the black, but you will see a few pink splatters all over the panel. I set this aside to dry completely while we work on our die cut pieces and the card base. Now, if you notice, out of the five bows, two of them are pretty thick while the other three are thin and intricate. I decided to pop up the thick bows using some foam squares and use liquid glue to adhere the thinner ones. You could also layer these up to add some dimension. It's now time to assemble our card front. Now, earlier in the video where we were the placement of the bows, I decided to take a picture of it for reference. So now I clearly know where each of those bows go. That makes the assembly of the card front a lot more easier. Like I mentioned before, I used my Barely Art liquid glue to adhere all of the three thinner bows directly onto the panel. And well, for the thicker bows, I already had my foam tape. Now, since these die cut pieces are so small and intricate, I like to use my reverse tweezers while I add them on the card front. Now, I feel this gives me a lot more control with the placement as compared to if I was doing it directly with my hands. Now, once I was done adhering all of these die cut pieces, it was now time to mount the card or this panel onto a card base. I used some foam tape to stick the panel onto a light pink card base. This color I thought matched perfectly with the bubble gum pink glitter cardstock. And well, that's a look at our finished card. I love how beautiful this card turned out. A very clean and simple card with so much shine and sparkle. Well, I feel that's the perfect combination. I love how pretty this is, and I had to recreate this card design in a different color. So I decided to use a beautiful blue glitter cardstock by Your Paper Insider for my bows and recreate this design. I love how this looks. I created a birthday card and well, I am really happy with the end result. I hope you had fun watching today's video and got inspired. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be found linked in the description box below. Note that all of the links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm introducing the new Bundle of Joy die set from the Little Smiles collection by Spellbinders. We will be creating a very sweet little scene of a special delivery from the sky. We have a stork delivering its bundle of joy. Well, before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let us first take a look at the Bundle of Joy die set. Now, this set includes a beautiful collection of little die cut pieces, which would be perfect to create a beautiful scene of a stork bringing in a special delivery from the sky. The stork peeking from the side with its delivery cap, and also a little baby with a bunch of different accessories, including a tiny bow, little beanie, mittens, and socks. We also have a washcloth in which our baby can be bundled up. The scene comes to life with a cloud backdrop as well as some beautiful little stars to fill the night sky. When assembled, the stork and the baby measures approximately 3.4 by 3.35 inches. Now I have little scrap pieces of paper in different colors which I will be using to cut out all of these little pieces to create our scene. Now these are some fun colored cardstock from the Your Paper Insider subscription box. You could also cut out all of these pieces using white cardstock and then probably ink blend or use your alcohol markers and add colors to all those little die cut pieces. Well, I am using my Spellbinder's Platinum 6 die cutting machine to cut out all these pieces. Once I have all my pieces ready, I like to store them in this tray by Cat's Crappiness. Now, I use this tray usually to store my sequences or gems while I'm adding sparkle on my card front. But this is big enough and perfect to store all of those little die cut pieces together. Now, if you take a closer look, you can see that all of these little pieces can be layered beautifully. They have etched markings on them, which makes our work a lot more easier. That's the beauty about the dies by Spellbinders. They can be so easily assembled. Everything coordinates perfectly well with each other, be it creating a focal point or an entire background scenes, just like the one we will be creating today. Even though I used colored cardstock to cut out all the little die cut pieces, I want to add some extra color and shading to these pieces for an added dimensional look. Now for that, I will bring my glass mat from Glassboard Studio. This mat that I'm using here measures 9 by 12 inches. These Glassboard Studio mats are made of premium quality glass. They are quick to clean, heat resistant, and stain proof, making them perfect for various mediums directly on the board. This also has a metal backing, which creates a magnetic surface perfect for holding papers, stencils, and lots more. I will be doing some ink blending over the little pieces. It is very easy to clean up all those ink markings from the board. I'm using some really bright pinks from the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink line, which would definitely stain any other surface. You will also note that as I'm applying glue to these little tiny pieces, the glue gets onto the mat, which I was easily able to clean using a wet rag. Well, once all of my pieces are colored and glued together, we can assemble the stork and the bundle baby, which would be the focal point of our card. I will put some foam tape on both these pieces since I want my focal point to be popped up on the cloudy sky background. For the sky, I cut a piece of blue cardstock to 4 by 5 and quarter, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. Then, using the cloud die, I cut three layers of the cloud. The first one using bright blue color, the second would be white, and the third layer using a very light gray color. I layered all of these clouds over one another using liquid glue and then cut off any of those extra pieces that were hanging from the edge of our cardstock panel. I then assembled the stork and our bundled baby towards the top of the card panel. Don't forget to add those little tiny stars scattered in the sky. Well, I did use foam tape for my focal point because I wanted to pop up and give an extra dimension to our focal point, and I used some liquid glue for the stars. I love how cute and adorable this little scene turned out to be. Now, before I stuck the panel onto a card base, I decided to add my sentiment strip, which is a letterpress sentiment that says, "Welcome, little one," which I thought was perfect for our little scene. I then adhered this panel on top of an A2 size note card. To finish off the card, I added some sparkle using my Spectrum Noir glitter brush pen, highlighting the pinks on the card. Well, here's a closer look at the finished card. I absolutely love how this card turned out. I hope you had fun watching today's video and got inspired. All the supplies that I used to create this card can be found linked in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. So, if you ask me what my favorite card making technique is, I would definitely say it's the blackout technique. I have used this in so many different projects to create beautiful, vibrant card fronts. Now, this technique takes embossing to a whole new level by utilizing the debossed side of an embossed panel. I think this is also one of the easiest way to create cards if you plan on mass producing cards with bold eye-catching focal points and a striking background. Well, before we take a look at the card project that I created today, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Well, I did create two cards for today's video, but I didn't realize my phone battery died at some point. So, unfortunately, I don't have footage of how I colored the second butterfly card. However, the techniques I used for both the cards are exactly the same. For my first card, I'm using the Brilliant Budding Floral Embossing folder, which comes with a coordinating die to cut out one of those flowers. However, for this card, I'm sticking just with the embossing folder to create a beautiful textured background. Now, this embossing folder was part of the latest Rain or Shine release by Simon's Stamp. I love this floral image, and I have created a card before using the same technique but in slightly different colors. Now, the card panel I'm using here is an 80-pound white cardstock. Before running the paper and the embossing folder sandwich through my die cutting machine, I like to mist the paper slightly with water. This step helps loosen the paper fibers and helps prevent any tearing or cracking, giving it a smoother and more durable result. Now, take a look at how beautiful that embossed panel is. Well, we will be using the debossed side of the image. I will be using my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend markers in this beautiful orange shade. Now, I love using these tri-blend markers for these types of projects because these markers include the different shades of color in the same pen, which makes adding depth and shadow so much more easier. There's no need to search for matching shades in your collection. I added vibrant greens to the leaves and stems to balance the warm tones of my flowers. Now, with the blackout technique, I like to use my alcohol markers. Well, that is a personal choice, but you could definitely use watercolors or ink blending or even pencil colors to add colors to these focal point images. So basically, all you're doing is coloring into these debossed images. Well, at this point, it does look a little incomplete and not very precise to the point, but trust the process. Once you swipe your ink pad over this colored image to create that blackout look, you will see what exactly I'm talking about. Now I'm using simple greens, which I feel matched perfectly with that vibrant orange on our flowers. After coloring all those debossed image, now we can get to the fun part, that is creating our blackout effect. Now here if you'll see, the picture does look a little incomplete, but it will be absolutely gorgeous once we swipe our ink pad. To do this, I swiped my ink pad across the panel, ensuring that only the raised area of the embossing were covered. For this card, I'm using the Simon's Stamp Positively Saturated ink in the shade Woodsy, which is a rich dark brown that complemented perfectly with the orange tones on the flowers absolutely beautifully. Well, I prefer using darker shades of ink to swipe on my panel as I feel that gives a more vibrant look to our card front. Well, here I am very lightly swiping my ink pad over the paper because I love the wood grain like pattern that the swiped ink gives on our background panel. Now, if you want a more dense look, I would suggest swiping your ink pad with a little more force so that all of that ink is absorbed by the papers and no streaks are formed. That will give you a more plain and cleaner look. But if you want a more textured and patterned look, I would suggest swiping the ink pad very lightly and gently, just like I'm doing here. Also, I like to make sure that I'm swiping my ink pad in one direction only to give that beautiful wood grain look. But you could definitely do it the way you want. There is absolutely no right or wrong way to do this. Now, after you run your ink pad over the panel, you will notice there are some areas where you must have missed to color on the edges of those embossed images. That would be an easy fix. All you need to do is bring back the same exact colors and fill in the white areas to get a more seamless look. Now that our panel is ready, I like to give it a minute or two before the ink completely dries. Because as you saw that I swiped my ink pad a couple of times, so the paper is quite saturated and wet at this point of time. So I would let the color settle while we can go and work on our sentiment or any other embellishments that we wish to add on our card front. To complete the card, I die cut a simple sentiment from the Simon's Stamp Everyday Easy Sentiment strips, keeping it clean and elegant. Now, this sentiment sheet comes in a pack of four. Simon's stamp also has coordinating dies to cut out all of these sentiment pieces all at once. So, if you're someone like me who's not a big fan of cutting out sentiment strips using your paper trimmer, I would definitely recommend this step. As a final touch, I added some gold hologram sequins from This Calls for Confetti to give the card a bit of sparkle and shine. I'm really happy with how gorgeous this panel turned out. The blackout effect with the vibrant colors and simple sentiment creates a striking design, and the sequins add just the right amount of glimmer. For card number two, I use the Fantasy Butterflies embossing folder, which also comes with the coordinating dies that we will be using later to complete the look. This embossing folder is perfect for creating an intricate butterfly filled background that adds so much texture and detail to your card design. I started by embossing with an A2 size cardstock panel with this gorgeous butterfly pattern, and the level of detail in this design is absolutely stunning, and I decided to go all in with some vibrant rainbow colors. Of course, you could easily use a single color palette if you are aiming for a more subtle look, but rainbow shades really bring out the butterflies to life. After finishing the coloring on the deboss side, I wanted to add a bit of depth and detail. I swiped the positively saturated ink in the shade charcoal across this embossed area. The dark ink creates a very whimsical blackish hue that really enhances the wings of the butterflies, giving them a beautiful and striking contrast against the vibrant colors. Take a look at the two panels that we created today. The first one features a very clean and simple and elegant floral pattern against a wood grain background, while the second showcases a stunning rainbow butterfly backdrop with glittery centers made using glitter cardstock from Your Paper Insider. I kept the sentiment on both these card fronts minimal as I wanted to highlight the backgrounds, designs, and colors. I mounted these panels onto white card bases, and now we can call these cards complete. I'm really happy with how easy these were to create and how vibrant and colorful they've turned out. Thank you again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed watching the video and I really encourage you to give this technique a try yourself. Well, all the supplies that I used in today's video will be linked down in the description box below. All the links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to be sharing this video with you guys because today I'm taking part in the Simon Says Stamp You're My Favorite Release blog hop. Well, we are on day 2 of this inspiring hop and the new release is absolutely packed with creativity from playful stamps to coordinating dies to stunning layering stencils, fun papers and eye-catching embellishments. Well, before we dive into the projects that I created, let's talk about this awesome giveaway that's happening right now. So, when you shop for $30 or more from this latest new release, you will receive a Simon's Stamp exclusive Sunny Fern emboss and cut folder, which will be automatically added to your cart. Don't forget to head over to my blog for more fun details about this hop and to see what other talented creators have created. Well, before we jump into today's card tutorial, I would be absolutely grateful if you could take a moment to subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I post a new video. For today's video, I kept things very clean and simple with two elegant birthday cards featuring the big botanical stamp set from the latest release. This stunning set includes two large floral images, a bold hyacinth, and a graceful tulip, along with a delicate butterfly and the dragon flower, all illustrated in a beautiful vintage inspired style. I always seem to need a lot of birthday cards, so I figured this was a perfect chance to create a bunch at once. I went with a very clean and simple design that's super easy to mass produce in a variety of different color combinations. While I'm making birthday cards today, this layout works beautifully with any sentiments you choose. To start with, I placed an A2 size panel in my stamping tool and chose the two large floral images from the set for my card fronts. I began with the hyacinth, positioning it towards one corner of the panel. I liked how that placement created a strong visual balance, keeping the focal point on one side and leaving space for the sentiment on the other. Because the image is quite large and extends off the edge of the panel, I flipped the stamp upside down to make it a lot more easier to stamp cleanly without any obstruction. For my floral image, I picked few lovely purples. Now, all of the inks that I'm using here are from the Simon Says Positively Saturated ink line. I used violet and orchid for my flower and limelacious and perfection for the stems. I started by inking out the floral bunch using purple shades. Well, before adding any color, I masked off the stems and leaves to prevent any purple ink from getting onto those areas. You can use masking tape or, like I did here, just simple sticky notes. Now, once everything was masked and secured, I stamped the floral image using the orchid ink. If you notice any purple ink accidentally getting into the stem area, you can easily clean it up with a blending brush or even the tip of your finger. Now, after stamping with orchid, I cleaned off the stamp and re-inked it with violet, which is a gorgeous purple that leans more towards the blue shades as compared to orchid. Now, each time I stamped the floral image, I made sure to mask the stems and leaves again for a clean result. Then I repeated the same exact process for the stems and leaves, this time using beautiful greens. We have Perfection and Limelacious, again from the Simon Says Positively Saturated ink line. Just a quick reminder, make sure to remove the mask after each stamping and before closing the lid of your stamping tool. Also, you will notice that whenever I add the second layer of color, be it violet for the floral bunch or Perfection for the stems and leaves, I like to soften the edges of the ink using a blending brush. This helps fade the ink slightly and create a more dimensional blended look. If you look closely, you will notice both orchid and violet on the flowers and a beautiful mix of the two shades of greens on the stems and leaves. Just look at how beautiful that hyacinth focal point turned out. I'm absolutely loving the color combination on it. Now, since we are mass producing these cards, I like to work in batches. So, with the hyacinth done for card number one, I moved on to creating the focal point for card number two. This time, I used the tulip image and stamped it on the second card front, blending using soft pink and yellow shades for the flower and using the same greens for my stems and leaves. Now, I followed the same masking technique to protect the areas I didn't want to ink. I began with punch ink at the base of the flower and gently faded it out using my blending brush, then added zest to blend into the rest of the petals. Now, both of these are from the Positively Saturated Mini Ink Pad collection, which are just the smaller versions of the full sized ink pads. You will also notice that I added a deeper green, which was filled along with Perfection and Limelacious to the stems and leaves of the tulip for an extra depth and dimension on this image. I'm absolutely in love with this color combination. This inspiration actually came from a recent trip to a tulip farm where I saw the most vibrant blooms. The ones that really caught my eyes were these stunning pinks and yellow tulips. They were so vivid and full of life, I just had to recreate them. Now, here's a side by side look at both the panels, each featuring these gorgeous floral focal point images. You can definitely create more panels using the same focal point design if you'd like to build a bigger batch. Now, once I was done stamping my floral images, it's time to move on to the sentiments. As I mentioned earlier, when I'm mass producing cards, I like to work in batches. So, after finishing my focal point, I moved on to stamping my birthday sentiments. Now, this particular set includes two layers of sentiment. One is the larger birthday sentiment, and that is paired with a smaller sub sentiment. I stamped the main birthday sentiment on each of the card front using the Simon Says Stamp Grid transparency sheet to make sure that everything is perfectly aligned and straight. I used VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp, which gives a rich, crisp black impression. You'll notice I let part of the sentiment slightly overlap the floral image. This, I think, adds a nice visual connection and helps tie the entire card front together beautifully. Off camera, I also stamped the sub sentiments for both these cards. Now, for the tulip design, I used Have the Happiest Birthday, and for the hyacinth card, I stamped Birthday Wishes to You. I really love how both these cards turned out. They are clean, simple, and so elegant. But of course, no card of mine feels complete without a little sparkle, splatter, or even bling. So I placed both the card fronts into my splatter box and masked off the sentiments using scrap pieces of those sticky notes. Then, using a paintbrush dipped in black watercolor, I gently tapped it to create some soft random splatters across each of those card fronts. I let the panels completely dry before removing the masks and mounting them onto a top folding A2 size card base. Here's a look at the finished cards. I absolutely love how these cards turned out. This was such a fun and quick project, and I can definitely see myself creating more of these in a variety of different color combinations, creating more birthday cards, or even swapping out the sentiments to build a beautiful gift set. This would be perfect for Mother's Day, for Friendship Day, thinking of you, thank you cards, or even create beautiful sympathy cards. I hope you had fun watching today's video as much as I loved creating these beautiful cards. All the supplies that I used to create these cards will be linked down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I will get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Your support is always appreciated. Don't forget to check out my blog post for more details on today's blog hop, and be sure to browse the You're My Favorite release photo gallery from Simon System for even more inspiration. I will have the link for everything again in the description box below. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are creating a very clean and simple card design featuring a beautiful wavy background and a minimal floral die cut as the main focal point. I'll be using one of my favorite techniques, that is cutting the die cut pieces from white cardstock and bringing them live with some vibrant ink blending. Before we jump in, I'd really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icons so that you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Let's dive into the products I'll be using today. So first up, I've got this very fun wavy background stamp by Simon Stamp. It features a repeating pattern of smooth flowing curves that look a bit like squished rainbows or groovy waves. I love how bold and rhythmic this design is. It adds a great sense of movement and a subtle retro vibe to your backgrounds. It's perfect if you're going for a playful, modern, or even an abstract cut style. The stamp is also great for inking and coloring techniques, and it really helps create eye catching effects that make your card backgrounds pop. Next up, let's talk about the focal point of our card, for which I'll be using the Exotic Blooms die, which adds a beautiful touch of tropical elegance to our card front. This die features two leafy stems, each forming a single flared cup-shaped blossom. The prominent stamens really stand out and give the flowers some striking detail, making them a perfect focal point for any card design. Alright, so let's get started with our background. I'm beginning by stamping this beautiful design onto an A2 size card panel. To make things easier, I'm using my new Ultinew stamp wheel, which holds the cardstock securely in place. What I love about this tool is that it gives me enough room to stamp a full 6 by 6 inch background without worrying about the panel shifting around. For the color, I decided to go with a soft neutral tone. I'm using my Simon's Stamp Positively Saturated ink in the shade Latte. It allows a lovely light brown that creates a gentle baby soft background. I only stamped it once as I didn't want too much intensity or saturation on my background. The idea here is to keep the background subtle, just a hint of color, so that all of the attention stays on my focal point and the sentiment, which I will be stamping beside my focal point later on at the end. Now that our background is all done, let's move on to the focal point of the card. Off camera, I went ahead and die cut the exotic blooms using white cardstock. I used a 110-pound cardstock for this, especially because the stems on this floral arrangement are quite delicate. A heavier weight cardstock really helps keep everything sturdy and in place. Now, you could absolutely use colored cardstock for these little pieces, but I personally prefer starting with white. That way, I can customize the colors exactly how I wanted during the ink blending process. And honestly, I didn't even know I'd be using blue on my flowers until I reached this step. If I had a die cut from colored cardstock, I'd be locked into that color. So, white gives me flexibility to go with the flow. Let me know in the comments below what kind of crafter are you? Do you plan every detail before you start, or you just create as you go? I'm definitely the second type. I don't plan much, I just dive in. So, having everything cut from white cardstock makes the process so much more easier for me. To add color, I placed all of those tiny little pieces onto my Simon Says stamp sticky mat. It holds them in place perfectly while I ink blend using the positively saturated inks. Now, since these are super delicate and tiny, I'm using my mini ink blending brushes by Cat Scrappiness. They give me great control and even coverage, especially for those little details. If you look closely, you'll notice I didn't color the entire petal blue. I left the edges white to create a soft gradient. These brushes are perfect for that subtle blended look. Let's talk about the colors I used for the flowers and leaves. For my flowers, I started with Cadet. It's such a beautiful and vibrant blue. Well, to add some depth and dimension to the center of each petal, I blended in a bit of Royal, which is the darker shade in the same ink trio. This gave the petals a very nice gradient and made them pop. I used a similar approach for my leaves. I blended two shades of green, pine and Asian, to give them a soft yet dynamic look. Then, to really make the stems and the base of the leaves more dramatic, I added a touch of woodsy, which is a dark brown shade. A little extra shading adds so much character to these beautiful flowers. And finally, for the stamens in the center of the flowers, I went with my all time favorite yellow, which is citrine. It is such a bold, cheerful shade, and it really brings everything together. Now it's time to start assembling the floral elements. Using my Barely Art liquid glue, I went ahead and adhered the petals and the stamen together. I'm leaving the stems off for now because I wanted to finalize the placement of the entire floral arrangement on my card front before committing to that step. To do that, I bought back my wavy background panel and started playing around with the layout just to see how I can best position the flowers while making sure I leave enough space for my sentiment as well. Now, for this design, you could totally go with a die cut sentiment or even a sentiment strip, and that would look absolutely beautiful. But I decided to stamp my sentiment directly onto the background to keep the look very clean and cohesive. Once I was happy with the placement of everything, I went ahead and adhered the stems to the flower. Then, using more of that liquid glue, I attached the entire floral assembly onto the card front, creating this elegant and eye catching focal point. Here you'll see me using my reverse tweezers by Cat Scrappiness, and let me tell you, these are one of my top 5 must have crafty tools. I use them all the time, especially when I am working with tiny die cut pieces, small embellishments, or anything delicate that needs precise placement. They make the whole process so much more easier and accurate. What I love the most about the reverse tweezers are the comfortable grip. It's really easy on my hands even during longer crafting sessions. And the size of this is just perfect. It fits really nicely in my hand without feeling bulky or awkward. If you don't have a pair of these yet, I highly recommend adding them to your crafty stash. For me, it's an absolute 10 on 10. It's time for the final step, that is adding the sentiment. I'm bringing back my card panel into my stamp wheel. For the sentiment, I chose this beautiful quote from the Sunflower Garden stamp set by Simon Says Stamp, which says, "May your day be as beautiful as a field of white flowers." I thought it paired perfectly with the clean and simple design of our card, and it complements the floral focal point so nicely. It adds a warm, uplifting touch to finish off the entire card absolutely beautifully. And that's a wrap. Here's a look at our finished card. Isn't it amazing how simple this design is, yet so striking? Even with a full wavy background, it never overpowers our focal point. It actually enhances the overall look and keeps everything so cohesive. This subtle stamp pattern really ties in all the elements together, and paired with our sweet sentiment, this card works for so many different occasions: birthdays, thinking of you cards, or just a friendly hello. I hope today's video inspired you to try a clean and simple design with a bold background and a colorful focal point. All the supplies that I used to create this card will be linked down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm sharing 4 clean, simple, and elegant card designs, all made using just one stamp set. I really want to show you that you don't need a ton of supplies to create beautiful cards. With a single stamp set and a few ink pads or some colored cardstocks or even plain white cardstock, you can make stunning projects with ease. For today's card, I'm featuring the Wildflower Cuttings stamp set from the brand new Friend Like You release by Simon Says Stamp. This video is also part of day 2 of the Simon Says Stamp blog hop, where you'll find loads of inspiration from an incredibly talented lineup of designers. Be sure to check out the description box below for all the details, and don't miss out on grabbing the U2 stamp set. It'll be automatically added to your cart with any purchase from the Friend Like You release until supplies last. I will be using the Wildflower Cuttings stamp set from the newest release. It's a 6 by 8 inch set that features delicately illustrated branches and cuttings, some adorned with those lovely blossoms, as well as a beautifully curved vase designed to hold 2 stems. Now, there's also a slim strip of floral tape that is included to add a subtle decorative touch to your scenes. The set comes with some thoughtful collection of sentiments, which include "Thank you for everything," "Just for you," "I hope you're feeling better," "Thinking of you today and always." Now, these sentiments make this set perfect for creating heartfelt cards that celebrate courage, appreciation, or simply offered comfort and encouragement. Coordinating dice are also available and can be bought separately or as part of a combo bundle that includes both the stamp and the die set. I'll be pairing these beautiful floral stamps and heartfelt sentiments with some fun, vibrant colors from Simon Says Stamp's Positively Saturated Ink collection. And to finish things off, I'll be adding a touch of shine and sparkle using the Positively Dazzling Gems for that perfect final touch. I'm starting with an A2 size panel positioned on my stamp wheel. Using the Simon Says Stamp Grid transparency sheet for alignment, I'll begin by stamping the sentiment before adding any of those floral elements. I chose the sentiment which says "Thinking of you today and always" and stamped it in the beautiful teal shade, which is ocean. This is easily one of my absolute favorites from the entire Positively Saturated Ink collection. I place the sentiment in the lower right quadrant of the panel, and from there we will begin building a soft floral arrangement around it to create a balanced and an elegant background. I stamped the sentiment twice to achieve a clean, crisp, and more saturated impression. I've been using these inks for a while now, and they've become my go-to for both stamping and ink blending. Now, these are dye-based inks with a quick drying formula, and since they are also water reactive, they work beautifully for all your watercolor techniques as well. Now that my sentiment is stamped, it's time to work on building the floral background. For this design, I chose to use one of the delicate branches from the stamp set and stamp it multiple times around the panel. Rather than having a single floral focal point, I wanted to create a full elegant background using repeated stamping. Since I'm aiming for a clean and simple aesthetic, the only pop of color on this card will be the ocean ink that I used for the sentiment. The rest of the card will remain classic black and white. To stamp the branch image, I used VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a pigment ink that's great for capturing fine details and intricate lines. Now, if you plan to color your stamped images with alcohol markers, I recommend switching to the Memento Tuxedo Black ink instead, since it's Copic safe. And for those who want to add a bit of extra shine and dimension to this background, you could also sprinkle some clear embossing powder over the stamped branches and heat set them to get a beautiful glossy effect. I continued stamping the branch repeatedly around the sentiment to build the full background. Just a quick tip, be sure to clean your stamp well between impressions, especially when repositioning it around the card panel. You might notice a few smudges here and there, as I did, but don't worry, we'll cover those up later with a few embellishments. Originally, I had only planned to stamp the floral branches on two ends of the card panel, but once I saw how striking the black and white design looked paired with that bold teal sentiment, I couldn't resist filling in the rest of the background. I continued stamping the branches on either side, filling in all the empty spaces to complete the look. I absolutely love how this card front turned out. It's clean, elegant, and so visually balanced. This is definitely a layout you can recreate easily and even mass produce in different color schemes to suit various occasions. Like I mentioned earlier, you could take it a step further by heat embossing the stamped branches to add some shine and texture, or even coloring in the leaves for a completely different look. The versatility of this stamp set really shines through here. Whether you keep it minimal or go all out with color and embellishments, you're sure to end up with a beautiful card every single time. Here's a closer look at our finished panel. You might notice a few smudges, some along the edges, and even a small one in the center of the branch, but don't worry, we'll take care of those with some simple embellishing later on. Now let's move on to card number two. The concept here remains similar, that is, using repeat stamping, but with a few thoughtful changes. For this card, I stamped the sentiment in black and added color to our background instead. I used the small leaf stamp from the set and inked it up with Perfection shade from the positively saturated ink line. I stamped the leaves repeatedly to fill the background, creating a soft and elegant pattern. The sentiment I chose for this card reads "Thank you for everything," and I stamped it using VersaFine Onyx Black ink again for that crisp, detailed look. Now, since the leaf stamp is fairly small, I used an acrylic block to stamp the image across the background. However, if you're not confident about getting a consistent impression, I would recommend using the stamping platform to ensure even pressure and clean results every time. I stamped the leaves randomly across the background without worrying too much about their orientation. My main focus was on getting clean impressions and avoiding any major smudges. But honestly, even if a few impressions weren't perfectly crisp, I say leave them be. Those little imperfections can actually add a sense of texture and depth to the overall design. Well, and remember, card making is meant to be fun and joyful. Let's not be too hard on ourselves over small mistakes or happy accidents. It's all part of the creative process, and every card we make carries a bit of heart, and that's what really matters. And with that, panel number two is all set. I'm really happy with how beautifully soft and elegant this background turned out, and the subtle color combination with the black sentiment creates such a lovely balance. Now, let's move on to card number three, where I decided to take a slightly different approach. Instead of using plain white cardstock, I opted for a gorgeous lavender shade called Heather. This cardstock is from the Rainbow Splash collection by Simon Stamp and weighs 80 pounds, making it sturdy enough for stamping and layering without any warping. For this card, I wanted to create a soft tone on tone effect by stamping the floral images repeatedly across the background. To achieve this, I used amethyst ink, which is a lovely shade of purple, just a little deeper than the heather cardstock itself. This creates a subtle monochromatic look that feels delicate and sophisticated. Now, since this floral image is relatively small, I again chose to stamp it using an acrylic block rather than a stamp platform. This gave me the flexibility to place the images exactly where I wanted it, and allowed me to work quickly to fill the entire background. To complement the beautiful floral background, I wanted to add a delicate floral focal point that would bring a bit of interest without overwhelming the design. For this, I chose to stamp a small, delicate branch onto a narrow strip of white cardstock. The strip will be layered over the background, providing contrast while still letting the soft floral images on the background shine through. I stamped the branch using my trusty VersaFine Onyx black ink, which gives crisp, detailed impressions, perfect for fine line images. As far as that strip goes, this was actually a scrap piece of white cardstock. All I wanted is a thin strip that would comfortably fit the focal point image without overpowering the entire card. I mounted the white strip onto a piece of black cardstock to add some visual interest and dimension. That black border really helps the focal strip stand out and gives the whole card an extra pop. Before adhering the focal strip onto the card background, I stamped the sentiment which says, "Just for you," right below the floral image. The sentiment is small and fits perfectly in that space, complementing that delicate branch without overpowering it. When attaching the strip to the card panel, I positioned it slightly to the right rather than centering it. This subtle asymmetry not only helps the focal point stand out even more, but also allows the beautiful stamped background to remain visible and appreciated. I added color using this gorgeous purple shade called Hydrangea Blend from my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend marker set. This purple really enhances the tone-on-tone effect and gently softens the white space on our focal point strip. Well, here's a look at the finished panel. I absolutely love how this turned out. The vibrant floral background pairs beautifully with the delicate floral branch and the small sweet sentiment, creating a perfectly balanced and harmonious design. Moving on to the fourth and final card today, I decided to try some ink blending and incorporate one of my favorite color combinations, which is orange and pink. Now for this, I'm using my glass mat from Glassboard Studios, which I absolutely love whenever I'm ink blending on cardstock or working with stencils. These strong magnets hold everything securely in place, making the process much more easier and neater. Now, I don't use this mat often on my videos because of the reflection it causes under my current lighting setup. I'm still working on improving the lighting in my craft room. But if you are in the market for a reliable craft mat, this is definitely something I highly recommend adding to your crafty stash. Now, for this card project, I wanted to create a circle for my soft ink blended base. To do this, I created a circle mask. You can use masking stencils or sheets for this, but I prefer to repurpose the sturdy cards that come in my Simon Says stamp boxes. I cut out several shapes from these to use as masks whenever I need them. For the circle, I used the basic circle shaped die by Simon Says Stamp to cut out the mask. I positioned it towards the lower left hand corner of the panel and secured it with these strong magnets. To protect the rest of the panel, I covered the edges with post-it notes, preventing any unwanted ink from getting outside the masked area. I then blended cantaloupe, sherbet, and sweets ink inside this masked circle, creating a soft, vibrant background that will serve as perfect base for my focal point image and the sentiment. Once I was happy with the ink blending, I decided to add a bit of shimmer to the circle. So, before removing the mask or moving on to stamping the focal point and the sentiment, I gave the area a light spray of shimmer mist to add a soft, subtle sparkle. You'll notice I didn't use my splatter box for this step since I'm working on the glass mat, and cleanup here is super easy with just a bit of water and a microfiber cloth. After that, I carefully removed the mask and the post-it notes. Now I'll set the panel aside to dry completely before moving on to stamping the floral focal point and my sentiment. To clean up, I like to keep a spray bottle filled with water handy. I simply spritz some water onto my glass mat and wipe it down with a microfiber cloth. It's quick, easy, and keeps my workspace tidy. Now, here's a look at that beautiful sparkly circle we created. I just love how the pink and orange blended together. It's one of my absolute favorite color combinations. It works wonderfully not only for ink blending but also for stamping projects as well. Once the panel was completely dry, I placed it back onto my stamp wheel to add the sentiment and the focal point image. I started by stamping my sentiment, which says, "Our friendship means the world to me," towards the right hand corner of this panel. Then I stamped the two delicate floral branches, making sure they overlapped slightly to create a natural yet cohesive look. I also made sure that both the branches extended across the edge of the ink blended circle onto the plain white cardstock, just like I did for my sentiment. This small detail helps tie the design together, creating a smooth, seamless transition between the colored and the white areas of the panel. Masking and ink blending selected areas of your card panel is a simple yet powerful technique that you can completely transform your design with. When you combine this with bold black stamped focal point images, it creates a striking silhouette effect that really stands out on your card front. Now, what's great about this technique is that it's really versatile. You're not limited to just one shape like I did here. You can mask off a circle, a rectangle, or even just the edges of your card panel to create interesting borders and frames. Each shape gives a unique look and allows you to experiment with different layouts and focal point placements. Once your mask is in place, you can blend a variety of ink colors within that space. Try mixing bold shapes for high contrast or use softer tones for a more subtle, elegant background. The possibilities are endless. You can play with monochromatic palettes, gradient blends, or even vibrant rainbow combinations, which is something that I would love to try in my next project. Now, this method works beautifully for creating clean and modern designs, and it's also a great way to draw attention to your stamped images and sentiments. It's definitely a go to technique that every card maker can customize to suit their own style and creativity. While I truly love how all four cards turned out, I have to say this one is definitely my favorite from today's set. It's not just the vibrant combinations of the orange and pink that speaks out to me, but also the way everything came together with the delicate stamped imagery, the bold silhouette against the ink blended background, the clean masking, and the soft shimmer from that shimmer mist. It all adds up to the design that feels both fun yet elegant while still maintaining that clean and simple style. With all the designs and the card fronts complete, it was now time to assemble the finished panels onto card bases. For each card, I adhered the panel directly onto an A2 size top folding note card. I kept the construction straightforward to let the design shine. I didn't add any foam tape or pop up the design. To add that perfect touch of sparkle, I used the positively dazzling gems across all of the card fronts. These gems cast the light beautifully and enhance each card without overpowering the design. That is just the right amount of shimmer to tie everything together. To adhere all of the gems on the card fronts, I used the new Positively Perfect Craft Glue by Simon. I have to say, I've really be loving this glue. Ever since I got my hands on it, it's become my go-to for almost all of my projects. Don't let the small bottle fool you. It really goes a long way. I have used it not only for attaching these tiny little embellishments and intricate die cut pieces, but also for adhering an entire background panel onto the card bases. It has a strong hold, a precision tip for controlled application, and dries nicely and clearly, making it an absolutely must have in your crafty stash. Here's a look at the finished card. I absolutely love how it turned out. The colors, the shimmer, and the overall composition came together so beautifully. Off camera, I went ahead and adhered the rest of the card panels to their respective card bases. All of these are top folding card bases. I tried to coordinate the base color with the ink shades used on each of those card fronts to create a more cohesive and polished look. I truly love how each card has its own unique personality. It's amazing to see using just one stamp set, we were able to create four completely different designs, each with its own charm and style. You might also notice a few well placed gems here and there. Some of those are added intentionally to cover small ink splotches and happy little accidents, proof that even imperfections can lead to beautiful results. Let me know in the comments below which among these four was your favorite. I hope you enjoyed today's card making journey as much as I did creating these beautiful cards for you guys. It's always inspiring to see how much versatility a single stamp set can offer. With just a bit of creativity, some ink, and a handful of supplies, we created four distinct cards, each with its own unique style and charm. From bold silhouettes and ink blended backgrounds to soft tone on tone stamping and delicate floral focal points. These designs show that you can stretch your supplies to the fullest. Be sure to check out the blog Hop. I have included a link to it along with all the products that I used to create today's cards in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we are diving into a fun and creative session where I'll be making 5 clean and simple cards using the beautiful rub-on transfers from the Simon System June 2025 Captured Joy Cut Kit. I've only used rub-ons once before, so I was genuinely excited to play with them again, and I'm thrilled with how these card fronts turned out. To really let the rub-ons shine, I kept the designs minimal, no added sparkle, splatters, or textures. Just a few sentiment strips to finish them off. I hope you enjoy the process and find some inspiration for your own projects. Before we get started, I'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Let us first take a closer look at the Simple Stories Vintage Flower Shop Rub-On Transfers. This set includes 2 gorgeous botanical themed sheets, each measuring 6 by 8 inches. The designs feature a mix of vibrant floral elements, playful sentiments in various sizes, and a lovely color palette of cheerful colors. The pack also includes an ice cream stick, which can be used to transfer the design onto your card panels. For today's project, I have pre-cut a few white panels measuring 3 3/4 by 5 inches, which is slightly smaller than my usual 4 by 5 1/4 inch. This allows for a wider colored border around the design. I'll be pairing these panels with some beautiful colored cardstock bases to really make the rub-ons pop. Apart from these rub-ons, I will be adding some sentiments on my card fronts. For the sentiments, I'll be using the modern scrapbook stamp and die set combo that was also included in the June card kit. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out my previous video where I did a full unboxing of the June card kit. I've listed all the links to the products featured in that video, and I will also leave a link to the video in the description box below for easy access. Let's start with our projects. Well, I'm starting by taking both the rub-ons sheets out of the packaging so we can admire that gorgeous floral designs up close. These rub-ons work much like sticker. You can apply them directly onto your card panels or any other surface. They'd be perfect not just for card making but also for decorating frames or creating dimensional shadow boxes. The images are printed on nearly transparent backing sheets. I will begin by trimming out the designs I want to use for my cards. You don't need to worry about cutting them perfectly, just a quick trim with your scissors will do. The borders won't show in the final result, so all you will see is that beautiful image seamlessly transferred onto your card panel. For card number 1, I have chosen to work with this gorgeous floral bouquet image placed inside a rustic bucket. There's something so charming about it. It immediately brings to mind a quaint little countryside flower shop filled with freshly plucked blooms and vintage decor. The illustration is so rich in detail and color that it easily becomes the centerpiece of our card. In addition to the main bouquet, I also trimmed out a few smaller flowers that were printed alongside the bucket. I will be carefully separating these from the main image and layering them to add extra dimension and depth to our focal point. That's one of the features I absolutely love about these rub-on transfer sheets, that you are not limited to using the designs as is. You can easily cut, rearrange, and layer multiple images to create a completely custom focal point. This flexibility allows you to get really creative with your compositions and gives each project a unique handcrafted look. Although the pack includes an ice cream stick to help transfer the images, I personally find that using a bone folder gives much more better control and a cleaner finish. I like to apply firm, even pressure with the bone folder, making sure every part of the image adheres fully and smoothly to the cardstock. This helps avoid any missed spots or lifting edges and ensures that the transferred image looks as crisp and seamless as possible. I have to be honest with you guys. When I first sat down to create, I really wasn't planning on making five cards. My original intention was to just make one, test out the rub on transfers again, and see how it goes. But the moment I completed that first card, I saw how beautifully the focal point image came together, and I was completely inspired. The ease of using the rub ons and the vibrant colors and all those elegant details were just too good to stop at one card. That first design sparked a wave of ideas, and before I knew it, I was reaching for more panels and creating a whole set of cards. For my second card, I picked this sweet little camera image from the transfer sheet. It's surrounded by a lovely floral accent that gives it such a cheerful, memory keeping vibe, perfect for sending to a friend or a loved one. To add just a touch of contrast and a bit of color pop, I decided to incorporate one of those sentiment rub-ons. I carefully cut it out and transferred it just beneath the image. I was honestly amazed by how seamlessly the sentiment blended into the design. It looked completely cohesive, like it was part of the original artwork. That's one of the things I really love about these rub-ons. Once applied, they sit so smoothly on paper that they truly look like printed elements. Here's a fun little idea too. If you're looking to add more interest, try transferring the sentiments onto different colored cardstock pieces. You can create your own custom sentiment strips that coordinate with the overall card design. It's a simple technique, but it adds a lot of personality and polish to your card projects. And just like that, I ended up creating three more cards. I honestly hadn't planned for it, but once I got started, the process became so enjoyable and creative, fulfilling that I didn't want it to stop. These rub-on transfers are not only easy to use but incredibly beautiful, and each image sparked new ideas as I went along. For card number three, I chose a charming image featuring a vintage style chair and a delicate water jug. There was something so peaceful and nostalgic about it. It reminded me of a quiet reading corner in a cozy, flower filled cottage. To add more depth and layered look, I combined several rub on elements around the main image. By layering different florals and subtle accents, I was able to enhance the overall vintage aesthetic and create a more dimensional focal point. I finished it off with a sentiment that brought just the right pop of color, tying everything together and giving the card a balanced and polished look. Moving on to cards 4 and 5, I decided to embrace a more minimal design approach. With so many intricate and detailed rub on images to choose from, I wanted to let a single bold element take center stage on each card. I carefully selected one large focal point image for each of those panels and left the rest of the design space clean and uncluttered. This approach really allowed the artwork to shine. The rich colors and the fine details of the transfers don't need much else. They carry the design effortlessly. It was such a joy to see how each card took its own personality, even with the simplest of the touches. Whether layered or minimal, these rub-ons added so much elegance and charm to every card, and I loved being able to explore different styles all within one cohesive set. Here's a look at all five card panels that we created. I absolutely love how they turned out. As mentioned earlier, the star of this project was definitely the beautiful rub-on transfer images. If I hadn't wanted to keep the focus on those stunning focal points, I might have added some splatters, embellishments, or even sequin mixes to bring out a little extra shine and sparkle. But keeping the designs clean really lets those gorgeous images take center stage. Now that our main card panels are finished, it's time to move on to adding the sentiments, an essential step that really ties the whole design together. For this, I'll be using the Modern Scrapbook Stamp and Die set. What I really love about this set is that how versatile it is. The coordinating dies aren't just designed to cut out the gorgeous focal images, but also perfectly cut out the sentiments. This makes layering and placement so much more easier and more precise, which is always a huge plus when you're working on clean and simple designs. Well, I plan on stamping a variety of sentiments from the set, including phrases like happy birthday, best day ever, I'm so glad we are friends, all of the happiest memories include you, and so on. To give these sentiments a bold and striking look, I'm stamping them onto a panel of rich black cardstock, which creates a beautiful contrast and really makes the white embossing powder pop. To get started, I carefully position the black cardstock panel onto my Altenew stamp platform, which helps me ensure perfect alignment and consistent stamping every time. I decided to heat emboss all of these sentiments in white for a crisp and polished finish. When it comes to white embossing, I prefer using the Simon's Stamp white pigment ink as my stamping base. In my experience, this ink works better with a white embossing powder than a clear watermark ink, resulting in a much sharper and more detailed image. The combination gives the sentiment a clean, professional look that really enhances the overall elegance of the card. This step really elevates the design by adding sentiment strips that complement the rub-on focal points, and I can't wait to show you how they come together in the final assembly. When it comes to heat embossing, I like to start by warming up my heat gun for about a minute or so before bringing it close to the paper. This helps ensure that the heat is evenly distributed once I begin melting the powder, which makes for a smoother and more consistent finish. While I was pouring the embossing powder onto the stamped image, I usually keep the heat gun running nearby in the background so it's ready to go as soon as I'm done. However, during this particular session, I noticed that some of the powder ended up sticking in areas where I didn't want it to. This usually happens when the anti-static powder isn't applied thoroughly across the entire panel, which was likely the case here. To clean this up, I like to use a very thin, soft paintbrush to gently sweep away any of that excess powder from the unwanted spots. This step is really important because it helps maintain that crisp professional look we are aiming for without any stray specks of powder on the final result. Once the excess powder is cleared, I carefully bring my heat tool to melt the powder. It's crucial to avoid holding the heat tool in one place for too long, as the concentrated heat can damage and warp the paper. Instead, I find it best to move the heat tool continuously and evenly across the surface. That steady movement will ensure that the embossing powder melts smoothly and thoroughly, creating a beautiful glossy finish that really makes the sentiment pop without any risk of burning or warping the paper. Next, I reached out for the coordinating dies to carefully cut out each of those stamped sentiments. Normally, I like to add dimension to my sentiment strips by either layering multiple die cuts together or using foam tape to raise them slightly off the card surface. This adds depth and visual interest, making the sentiments stand out. However, for this particular project, I chose to keep the sentiment strips flat and simple, sticking to just a single layer. As I mentioned earlier, my goal was to keep focus on those beautiful rub-on transfer images that serve as the main focal points for each of these cards. I didn't want anything to compete with or distant from those delicate detailed designs. Once all the sentiment strips were cut and ready, it was time to adhere them onto the card panels. I began by carefully positioning each of those sentiments, taking my time to arrange them exactly where I wanted to on the panels. This step is important because it allows you to make adjustments and find the perfect placements before committing to glue. Once I was happy with how everything looked and balance felt right, I used liquid glue to securely adhere each of those sentiment strips in place. The liquid glue gave me a bit of wiggle room to adjust if needed and ensured a strong bond for the final design. Once all the sentiment strips were firmly adhered in place, it's finally time to bring everything together by attaching the finished panels onto the card bases. Instead of sticking them onto the usual white cardstock for my bases, I wanted to add a little extra flair and personality by choosing some fun, vibrant colors that would complement with the hues in our rub-on focal point transfers. I selected a lovely color palette that included blue, brown, pink, green, and lavender. Each color carefully chosen because it matched so beautifully with the colors featured in the floral and vintage designs of the rub-ons. This subtle color coordination really helps tie the whole look of cards together and adds an extra touch of charm. To keep the cards feeling elegant and almost like a single layer design, I decided to adhere the panels onto the card bases using liquid glue. I didn't add any foam tape or extra layers uh, because I wanted the focus to remain on the rub-on transfer images and the sentiments without any distractions or added bulk. This technique keeps the cards lightweight and flat, making them easy to mail or gift while still offering a polished and finished look. And well, here's a look at the completed cards. I'm absolutely thrilled with how these turned out. The rub-on transfer sheets proved to be incredibly convenient and user-friendly, allowing me to create these detailed focal points without any mess of fuss. Honestly, I wasn't expecting on getting so inspired, but what began as a plan to make just a single card quickly turned into five unique designs. This makes for a perfect handmade card set, ideal for gifting to family, friend, or anyone special in your life who would appreciate a thoughtful handcrafted card. Well, I am genuinely excited to experiment more with these rub-on transfers in the future projects because they add such a unique artistic touch without requiring complicated techniques or lots of supplies. This experience has definitely opened up a new avenue of creativity for me, and I hope it inspires you to try them out too. Well, unfortunately, the rub-on transfers I used for these card projects are currently out of stock on the Salmon Stamp website. However, I will be sure to include links to a few of my favorite alternatives that have similar floral style and vibe. You'll also find links to all the other projects I used in today's video listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing a fun and vibrant card project featuring the gorgeous sentiment stamp from the new Happy Camper release by Simon Stamp. I used it to build this bright and colorful background filled with playful hues, meaningful sentiments, and lovely florals. Before we dive in, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. For today's card, I'll be featuring the absolutely stunning CZ Designs U2 stamp set, which is part of the latest Happy Camper release by Simon Stamp. This release is packed with so much fun and creative goodies. I'll leave a link to the full product lineup and the new release in the description box below. Be sure to check it out. This U2 stamp set is a small, compact 3 by 4 inch set, but it is packed with versatile and heartfelt sentiments, all centered around the powerful word you. The word "you" appears in a variety of beautiful styles and scripty fonts designed to pair perfectly with the coordinating sub-sentiments that is included in the set. This set is ideal for creating customized messages, whether you're sending love, gratitude, encouragement, or congratulations. For today's card, I'll be mixing and matching several of these sentiments to build a beautiful, vibrant, and uplifting background, along with some fun, colorful florals that I created using die cuts from products from the previous release, again by Simon Stamp. This stamp set does come with coordinating dies that cut out all of those U sentiments. However, for today's card, I'll be stamping them directly onto a white cardstock panel, which is trimmed to 4 by 5 and quarter inches, that is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. To begin, I placed my panel onto my stamping platform. Here I'm using the Ultranew stamp wheel, which features an ultra sticky mat to keep everything securely in place, especially helpful since I'll be doing quite a bit of repeat stamping. Just to be extra cautious, I also added a bit of washi tape around the edges, which you will see later in the video. Well, it's not absolutely necessary, but I'd rather be safe than risk having to start all over again. Next, I laid the transparency sheet over my panel, which will help me align all of the sentiments precisely. For the color palette, I wanted to keep things bright and vibrant, so I chose one ink from almost all of the color families, creating a soft rainbow effect. All of these inks are from the Simon Says Positively Saturated Ink Collection, with the exception of red shade, for which I'm using my Lumberjack Plaid Distress Mini Ink Cube. This set includes four unique styles of word U, and well, I decided to use all four on my card. I arranged them thoughtfully across the card front, allowing space to pair each one with a coordinating sub sentiment. This mix and match approach really adds interest and personalization to your design. The grid transparency sheet is incredibly helpful, not only for aligning the sentiments in straight lines, but also for visually balancing each section of that card. It made it so easy to divide the panel into quadrants and ensure everything felt cohesive and well placed. For each of the U sentiments, I chose different colors of ink. I started with Lumberjack Plaid, which is a rich red for my first U, followed by Sherbet, which was a lovely orange. Then we have Cadet, a bold blue, and Orchid, which is that vibrant purple you see in the end. I stamped each of these words twice to achieve a clean, crisp impression. Next, I moved on to the sub-sentiments. For that, I brought back my grid transparency sheet to help with the precise placement and positioned each sub-sentiment so that it slightly overlapped with the larger colorful U beneath it. Now, this is where you see I have my washi tape. That is because at some point I felt that my paper was moving and I didn't want to mess it up. Now, originally, I planned on stamping all of these sub sentiments using charcoal positively saturated inks, but later I switched to VersaFine Onyx Black ink for a deeper, crisper result. The bold black ink created a perfect contrast against that bright background and helped the sentiments really pop. I'm already in love with how this card is turning out. The vibrant colors paired with those gorgeous sentiments make it such a meaningful and thoughtful piece of art for the recipient. Now, sentiment stamps like these are perfect for creating personalized cards, and they work especially well when building an entire background using just words. I've actually created a similar design before where I used only sentiments to build the background for a teacher themed card. If you're interested in seeing that project, I have linked the video down in the description box below. Be sure to check it out. To fill in the empty spaces between the sentiments, I decided to add some beautiful floral elements. You can use any floral dies that you already have in your stash. For this card, I chose the lovely Buttercup die set. It includes two different bloom sizes, each with two layering pieces for added dimension. It also comes with two stem designs, but for today's card project, I will not be using the stems. I will just be using the flowers. And well, I cut out a bunch of these flowers using plain white cardstock. To color them, I placed my die cut pieces onto my Simon Says Stamp Ultra Sticky Mat, which is a great tool for keeping tiny bits in place while ink blending on them. I used the remaining colors from our earlier rainbow palette. For a few set of flowers, I used this gorgeous yellow citrine and pink sweets, which is I absolutely love this color combination of pink and yellow. It gives a beautiful transition. For few of those flowers, I paired the citrine with twilight, which is an absolutely beautiful blue. So up till now, other than the green shade from the rainbow, we have used almost all of the colors. We have oranges, yellows, pinks, blues, and purples. Now, let me know in the comments below, do you prefer die cutting with colored cardstock, or do you like to start with white and then add your own color? Personally, I love die cutting from white cardstock and customizing the colors myself. It gives me much more flexibility and control, letting me tailor the color palette perfectly to match the rest of my card design. For all of the ink blending on these florals, I'm using my mini ink blending brushes from Cat Scrappiness. There are two types of brushes by Cat Scrappiness, one with soft bristles and the other which has a little firmer bristle. Personally, I prefer the firm bristles as they give me better control and precision during all of this beautiful ink blending process. To add some greenery to the card front, I die cut a few leaves using the Leafy Sprigs die from Simon's Stamp. An older release, but still one of my absolute favorites. I find myself reaching for this particular leaf shape die often whenever I'm working with anything floral. For ink blending, I used three shades of greens. We have pine, perfection, and limelacious, which together create a lovely gradient and bring the foliage to life. After finishing the ink blending, I assembled all the florals, adding foam tape between the layers to give them some dimension and depth. Now it's time to bring these vibrant floral pieces into our colorful, sentiment filled background. There's really no right or wrong way of doing it. I simply started filling the open areas between the sentiments with the flowers. Now I focused on placing the yellow and pink flowers towards the top of the card while the blue and yellow ones were arranged near the bottom. To introduce a bit of contrast and visual balance, I added smaller blooms to the sides, slightly overlapping the different colors. For adhering everything together, I used the new Positively Perfect Craft Glue by Simon's Stamp. Well, not all of the flowers are glued flat to the card, but the smaller blooms were propped up using foam tape for added dimension and texture. Once the flowers were arranged, I tucked in the leafy sprigs around them to give the design a more finished and polished look. Well, if you're familiar with my card making style, you will know that I usually gravitate towards simple and clean and simple designs, often just using a focal point image paired with a sentiment, maybe even a background. But in this case, I definitely stepped outside my comfort zone. But I have to say, I'm really loving the result. The bright colors, the layers, and how a simple sentiment stamp with just a bunch of mix and match sentiments inspired me to push my boundaries out of my usual style. It all came together so beautifully. This part of the video is sped up quite a bit, but in reality, I spent a good amount of time carefully arranging each element. Even though, as I mentioned earlier, there's no right or wrong way of doing this, but I really wanted to make sure I was happy with the overall composition before adhering everything down. I paid special attention to ensure that none of that sentiments were hidden beneath the floral arrangement. In some areas, particularly around the edges of the cardstock, there weren't any large flowers, so I filled those gaps with a few leftover leaf pieces. This helped the overall design feel more complete and balanced. Once I was done adhering all of the florals, I just turned my panel and cut off any of those excess uh, leaves or florals or any adhered pieces using a pair of scissors. I absolutely love how this card front turned out. I'll definitely be revisiting this style, bringing together lots of elements, layers, and textures to create something vibrant and full of interest. To complete the card, I mounted the finished panel onto a craft cardstock base. I love how that soft brown tone complements the bright, colorful card front and really ties the whole design together. For finishing touches, I added some shine and sparkle to the florals and the leaves using my Spectrum Noir glitter brush pen. Then I added a few white highlights with my white gel pen to bring out that extra detail. Just a quick tip, always apply your glitter first before adding your gel pen highlights to avoid smudging. Well, with that, we have this beautiful card ready. I absolutely love how this card turned out. I hope you enjoyed seeing this colorful and sentiment focused card come together. It was so much fun stepping outside my usual clean and simple style to create something bold, bright, and full of layered elements. This project really shows how a great sentiment stamp can be the star of your design and how easily you can build around it with just a few thoughtful touches and supplies that you already have in your stash. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and don't forget to check out the full Happy Camper release by Simon Stamp. I will have links to all of the products and the products that I used to create this card down in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll be making not just one, but four completely different projects, all using the same stamp set. I'm excited to share four of my favorite techniques for working with background stamps, and I can't wait to show you how versatile they can be. Well, before we dive in, I would really appreciate if you could take a moment to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let's start by taking a closer look at the background stamp that I'll be using for today's card project. This is the Delicate Blossom stamp set by Simon Stamp, part of the fun new Happy Camper release. Now, I absolutely love the stamp set, and if you've seen my earlier videos, you might remember that this beautiful frame I created with it. That really shows how versatile the set is with endless possibilities and different designs. Now, along with that stunning 6 by 6 inch floral background, this also includes a bunch of beautiful, almost artistic sentiments. And well, there are coordinating dies available to cut out each of those sentiments, and I'll be sure to link them down in the description box below. Now, since I planned on creating four card projects, I started by trimming a piece of white cardstock into four panels. Now, each of these measures 4 by 5 and quarter, perfect for your standard A2 size card base. For all of the cards that we will be creating today, the first step will be exactly the same, stamping that gorgeous 6 by 6 inch floral background onto our white cardstock panels. I started with one panel and placed it onto my Ultranew stamp wheel, aligning it right in the center of that ultra sticky mat. This way, the stamp hangs off all four edges, ensuring none of those beautiful floral designs get cut off. Now, since I'll be using a mix of alcohol markers, ink blending, and some fun sprays on these florals, I decided to heat emboss the image. I stamped it with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a rich pigment ink that isn't alcohol friendly and can smudge during ink blending. By adding embossing powder on top of that VersaFine Onyx Black ink and heat setting it, the lines are sealed in, letting me add color freely without worrying about any of those smears or smudges. Now, before stamping, I did prep my cardstock with an anti-static powder tool so that the embossing powder sticks only to the stamped image. I can then stamp my image. Well, I did stamp this design twice to ensure a crisp, bold impression. Once I was done stamping, I carefully removed this panel from the ultra sticky mat. I used my Simon's Stamp Clear embossing powder. You could also opt for black embossing powder over the black ink, which I think would give the design extra shine and bold effect. Now, since the entire panel is covered with that gorgeous floral pattern, I used my reverse tweezers to hold one edge where there was no stamping. Then I generously sprinkled the embossing powder over the entire surface, making sure every stamped line was coated. After that, I tapped off the excess and funneled it back into the container and got ready to heat set this gorgeous image. Now, because we are heat embossing a full panel, the entire panel, it's very important to let your heat gun fully warm up before bringing it to the cardstock. While heating, keep the heat gun moving instead of holding it in one spot. This prevents the powder from over melting and also helps your panel from warping too much. Now, since this is a really big background, make sure that all of that gorgeous embossing powder is fully melted. You can tilt the panel under the light to check the hazy, grainy look will transform into a smooth, shiny finish as it heats up. That's your sign that the powder has completely melted and set into your paper. I prefer using a heavier weight cardstock when heat embossing a full background like this one, as it holds up better to the heat. Now, if your panel does warp, you can run it through your die cutting machine sandwiched between the plates, or simply place it under a stack of heavy books to flatten it out. Off camera, I repeated the same process for all four panels we cut out at the start of the video. and I just love how beautifully they turned out. In fact, if you know someone who enjoys coloring, this set of four would be a perfect gift for them. You could easily create multiples of these stamped and heat embossed panels and gift them to anyone who loves coloring or even ink blending. Just like with any mass production card making process, I like to batch produce one element at a time. In this case, that was the stamped and heat embossed backgrounds. Now it's time to bring these panels to life by adding color and vibrancy. Let's jump into card number one, where we will be ink blending some gorgeous pinks and oranges onto our first panel. For this blend, I'm using cantaloupe, blush, carnation, and watermelon. Well, this is one of my all time favorite color combinations. I absolutely love pinks and oranges, and I have created so many different projects using this particular combination. Now, I placed my panel onto my Glassboard Studios magnetic glass mat, which is hands down my favorite surface for ink blending. The magnets hold everything in place. Also, cleaning up is such a breeze. I started with blush in the center of the panel, then moved to cantaloupe for the orange tones. I think blush is one of my favorite colors in all of the Simon Says Positively Saturated ink collection that I have. I absolutely love that transition and that smooth texture. It's more of an orange transitioning towards the pink. Well, I love the smooth transition between the blush and the cantaloupe. And to add more depth around the edges, I bought in another shade of orange, which is sherbet. Once I was happy with the top half, I flipped the panel to work on the pinks. Before starting, I cleaned off any of that leftover ink from my glass mat to avoid contaminating the pinks. I began with carnation just below the blush area, then blended in watermelon. To deepen the pinks even more, I finished with a darker shade, that is sweets. This embossed resist technique is one of my absolute favorites, and it's perfect for mass producing in all sorts of color combinations. Just like the pinks and oranges we used here, you could try an ombre effect by blending the same colors in varying intensity for a soft gradient, or go bold with a full rainbow palette. I'm so happy with how this panel turned out. Those shiny black florals really pop against the vibrant ink blended background. Tell me in the comments below, what's your favorite color combination for ink blending. Moving on to panel number two, I was still feeling inspired by that pink and orange combo, so I reached for my Tim Holtz Distress Spritz Spray. Wow, that's definitely a tongue twister. Now, these sprays, I have two shades here. I have Spice Marmalade and Picked Raspberry. These sprays have a beautiful mix of pearlized pigments in a clear fluid base, which is perfect for porous surfaces like paper, canvas, and even wood. You can pair them with other distressed products for rich color and shine, but today I decided to keep it simple yet super shiny by spraying them directly over my heat embossed background. Now, before spraying, make sure to shake the bottles well, as the pigments tend to settle at the bottom. For a nice even mist of shimmer, spray from a slight distance. I placed my panel inside my splatter box to avoid getting ink all over my surface, then started with that gorgeous pink. Once I layered that pink over parts of the panel, I then applied the spice marmalade. I alternated between the pinks and the oranges until I was happy with the look on the panel. The colors here may not be as bold and vibrant as your regular distress sprays, but I absolutely love the soft luminous shine they added to my background. The best thing about using sprays on your projects is that there's really no right or wrong way of doing it. Sure, it can get a bit messy, but the results are always so worth it. I don't just love sprays for my backgrounds like these, they are also amazing when you use them with your stencils. You've probably seen me use my silver shimmer sprays too, adding that extra sparkle and shine to my card projects. Now, here's a side by side comparison of the pink and oranges while we ink blend and using these spritz sprays. You'll notice I used the same color combinations on both these panels but ended up with two completely different looks. While I let that panel dry, let's move on to panel number 3. Now for this one, we are doing some partial coloring, picking out just a few flowers from the floral background and coloring them all in a single hue. I'll be using my Ohuhu alcohol markers, but you could use colored pencils or even watercolors. If you choose watercolors, make sure to stamp and heat emboss your watercolor paper to protect the background. In the previous video where I created a frame using this gorgeous background stamp, I used pinks and oranges to watercolor the flowers and the result was absolutely stunning. This time I wanted to try something different, a vibrant blue, which isn't a color I usually reach out for when it comes to florals. I'm working with two shades here. I have a darker shade for the depth on the petals and the lighter one just for brightness. I wasn't too focused on shading or light direction or any technique here. I was just having fun experimenting with this gorgeous blue on my flowers. And honestly, I love how striking this blue looks on the flowers. It's inspired me to step away from my usual pinks and reds and try something less traditional colors when it comes to these beautiful floral projects. Please note that I colored a few of the flowers and left the rest of the image untouched. We are skipping coloring the leaves, flower centers, and remaining blooms. This partial coloring techniques creates a stunning visual contrast that I hadn't tried before, and I absolutely love how it turned out. There's also something about the combination of the blue and that bright, vibrant, shiny black that makes this panel look absolutely striking. Of course, you could choose to add multiple colors to your flowers if you'd like, but here I wanted to keep it simple with a monochromatic look. This is again a design you could absolutely mass produce in a bunch of different colors. You could color in your flowers reds, oranges, pinks, yellows, or even greens. Well, yes, not the petals, but you could color just the leaves as well. That would be a totally different look. Moving on to the final cut front, we are doing partial coloring again, but this time we will mask off one part of the panel and color the other. Now I'm using the grids on my mat here just to make sure that my washi tape is completely aligned and in straight line and I get a perfect division on this panel. I'm using my Ohuhu alcohol markers and well, I bought back my traditional reds for the flowers, which I find absolutely stunning. Keep in mind, I'm coloring every bit of this section, not just the petals, leaves, and the flower centers, but also the negative spaces in the background. I fill the background with a very light shade of purple. Just like with the blue flowers, I used two different shades of reds and greens for my flowers and leaves. For the flower centers, I stuck with a single shade of yellow, and for the background, I have that light purple. Again, I was not too focused on any perfect techniques. I was just having fun with my colors. That's why I mentioned earlier in the video that this stamped and heat embossed background would make a perfect gift for anyone who loves coloring. We don't have any fancy techniques or methods here. It's just plain coloring, one or two shades of colors of your choice, but the point here is absolutely enjoying the process. You could definitely color the entire panel without any separation, but just like the previous panel where we partially colored those blue flowers, this technique was also new for me, masking off half the panel and coloring the other half. I was really excited to give this a try. After finishing the coloring, I carefully peeled away the washi tape and just look at how stunning it turned out. I love the bold, vibrant colors contrasted against the crisp black and white side of the panel. And with that, we've completed all four panels. I absolutely love how beautiful and unique each one turned out. We used the same exact stamp set and heat embossed the image on every panel, yet managed to create four completely different card fronts. Off camera, I went ahead and stamped my sentiments again from the Delicate Blossom stamp set and assembled all of the cards. In less than an hour, I ended up with four absolutely stunning finished cards that look so different from one another. For the last card, where we have the partially colored background, I added a strip of black cardstock to separate the colored section from the black and white part before placing my sentiment and adhered that panel onto that gorgeous gray cardstock. For all of these cards, you'll see I kept the sentiment super simple and elegant and just let the background shine. I didn't add any sequin mix or splatters here. I just wanted my background to be the focus of my card. Now, for this card, I created a little square sentiment which says with thanks. Now, Simon Stamp does have coordinating dies for each of these sentiments, but I feel that a little circle or a sentiment strip would look absolutely gorgeous against that busy background. Now, here's the card where we use the sprit spray. Just take a look at that absolutely gorgeous shine. I'm pretty sure this is not really showing off on camera, but in reality, it looks absolutely stunning. And I'm not sure if this is my favorite of all the front four cards that we created today, but take a look at that beautiful blended background. And I used a partial die cut circle. And with the sentiment so happy for you, you could also add some sequin mixes on all of these card projects. But well, I will just let my background shine, and I absolutely love how these turned out. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this video inspired you to try new techniques with your background stamps and see how versatile a single stamp set can be. Whether you're into bold colors, soft blends, or partial coloring, there's so many fun ways you could mix things up. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please give it a thumbs up. I will have all the products listed down in the description box below. Please know that all of those links will be affiliate links, and if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Well, I usually lean towards creating clean and simple cards, but every now and then I like adding an interactive element. So for today's project, I kept the clean and simple look on the outside, but gave it a playful twist on the inside. A cheerful pop-up surprise waiting to be revealed. Before we dive into the pop-up mechanism, I wanted to quickly show you the products that I'll be using for this card. I have this absolutely gorgeous bundle, which is the Magnificent Magnolias set. It includes a large stamp set featuring two bare magnolia branches, five elegant script sentiments, along with smaller coordinating sentiments. I believe there are 25 or 26 smaller sentiments. The bundle also comes with matching dies, perfect for die cutting out those beautiful florals. You can either use colored cardstock or add ink blending to white die cuts to build your own stunning magnolia arrangement, complete with that bold sentiment options. Plus, the set also has an embossing folder with intricate etched designs to create three different vase styles and coordinating stencils to help color in both the stamped images, that is, the bare branches, and the embossed details. This 3D embossing folder includes three unique vase designs inspired by modern ceramics. You could use them to create a full card front paired with a sentiment or cut them out individually to build your own custom design. For today's project, I'll be using one of the smaller vases inside the card as part of the pop-up feature. To add color, I'll be using these stencils to bring the stamped magnolia branches to life, as well as the embossed vases as well. Now that I've shared all the products that we'll be working with, let's start putting our card together step by step. For the base of my project, I chose two different pieces. The first one is a light pink A2 size card base, which will serve as the foundation of our card. To go along with that, I also prepared a white card panel which is slightly smaller than an A2 size card base. I trimmed this panel down intentionally so that once it is placed inside, we have that soft pink border framing the white insert. That little detail adds a really clean and finished look to even the inside of our card. Now, because I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to showcase a vase with flowers as the main feature on the pop up, I decided to start by cutting those elements first. Having those pieces ready ahead of time gave me a clear idea of the size and placement of the pop up stand. This step is important because before I cut the pop up mechanism itself, I wanted to be sure that I had a good sense of where the vase and the floral arrangement would sit inside the card. That way, when the card opens, the elements pop exactly where I'm envisioning them, creating that fun surprise effect. I began this step by embossing the vase. You'll notice that I only used a small piece of cardstock for this, and that was intentional. I wanted just that one specific vase design for the embossing folder. So there was no need to run a full sheet through the embossing folder. The paper I chose for this is this absolutely gorgeous paper by Your Paper Insider and has the most gorgeous wood grain texture on it. I felt like that subtle detail would really enhance the vase, giving it a look of a textured, handcrafted ceramic piece. Now, before trimming out the vase, I wanted to add a little extra depth and dimension, so I reached out for my positively saturated inks from Simon's Stamp and used a couple of shades of browns to bring in some shading. To do this, I placed the embossed piece into my sticky mat, which kept it in place while I worked with the ink blending. Then, using the coordinating stencil, I added ink blending over the vase. The stencil has two layers. The first one covers the entire vase, giving it a smooth base color, and the second adds a subtle detailing to the lower portion of the vase. For the first layer, I used a lighter shade of brown, and for the second, I deepened it with a darker brown. Together, these layers really brought the vase to life and gave it a more of a dimensional and ceramic look. Now, the cardstock that I was using wasn't particularly a heavy cardstock, and since I knew that the vase was going to be part of the pop up feature inside the card, I wanted to reinforce it so that it would be a lot more sturdier. Interactive cards require the focal point elements to be strong enough to hold their shape when they pop up. To solve this, I backed the vase with a piece of craft cardstock which is almost identical to the shade of the wood grain paper. I cut the craft piece of cardstock slightly smaller than the main vase piece so it wouldn't show around the edges. This extra layer added stability I needed, making the vase more durable to be the star of our pop up mechanism. Well, you could also use a heavyweight cardstock instead, but I love that wood grain texture on that pattern paper. That's the reason I used it for this pop up element. Now that our vase is ready, we can move on to creating the pop up stand that will hold it in place inside the card. The nice thing about this step is that there isn't a strict rule about where exactly the pop up has to go. It really depends on the look you want. The only thing you need to keep in mind is that once your focal element is attached, it should sit comfortably inside the card and not hang off the edges when the card is closed. For my card, I decided to position the pop up feature slightly towards the right hand corner. I began by measuring and marking a 1 inch section with my pencil, which gave me the width of the pop up stand. The thickness or the width of the stand can vary depending on how large or detailed your pop up element is. Since I planned to feature the vase with a couple of flowers, I knew that my element would be larger size, so I gave the stand a little extra width to provide enough support. After making the marks with my pencil, I drew two parallel lines and then carefully cut along those lines using my scissors. If you're comfortable, you can also use an X-Acto knife or a craft knife for cleaner cuts, but personally, I prefer using scissors. It feels safe and more controlled in my hands. Now, once the cuts were made, I gently pushed the little tab or flap inwards with my finger, pulling it down firmly to create a crease. This simple fold is what turns the cut into a working pop up mechanism, forming a step like platform inside the card base. That step will serve as the stand where our vase and flowers can sit securely, ready to surprise the recipient when the card is opened. Now that the pop up mechanism was in place, it was time to bring the inside of the card to life by adding the decorative elements. I already had my vase prepared earlier, so the next step was to work on the flowers that would complete the arrangement. To save some time during the filming process, I had batch produced a number of flowers in advance using the Magnificent Magnolias die set. For these, I chose a few different shades of pink cardstocks to give the florals a soft layered look. In total, I had 5 flowers ready to go, 2 of which I plan to use as part of the pop up feature inside the card, while the remaining 3 would be reserved for decorating the card front. It actually took me a little while to play around with the placement and decide exactly which flowers work best for the inside versus the outside. Sometimes that part of the process is just trial and error, moving pieces around until the balance feels right. Once I was happy with the arrangement, I was ready to adhere the flowers to the pop up stand. But before attaching anything permanently, I decided to add the sentiment to the inside of our card. I stamped the phrase, "I appreciate how you're always there for me no matter what," from the same Magnificent Magnolia stamp set. I felt like this message paired beautifully with the larger thank you sentiment that I had planned for the card front. Together, the two sentiments would create a really heartfelt message for the recipient. Now, I stamped this sentiment on the top panel using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a beautiful black crisp ink. With the sentiment stamped and the layout finalized, it was finally time to assemble the pop up elements, adhering the vase and carefully layering the flowers to complete the cheerful surprise waiting on the inside of our card. I began by applying a bit of liquid glue directly onto the pop up stand and carefully adhered the vase over it. I pressed it down gently and held it in place for a few seconds to give the glue enough time to grab and secure the piece firmly. Once I felt confident that the vase was anchored properly, I opened up the card panel and moved on to arranging the floral elements. Now, arranging the floral elements did take a little extra time and patience because I wanted to be sure that the flowers were not only adhered securely to the vase, but also positioned in a way that looked natural and balanced. At the same time, I had to pay attention to the card's dimensions as well, making sure that none of the floral pieces extend past the edges of the card base when it was closed. It was a bit of a balancing act, but once everything was in place, the arrangements started to really come together beautifully. You'll notice that only the vase itself is attached directly to the pop up feature, while the flowers appear to be floating above it. The structure comes together because the flowers are carefully glued to one another and anchored to the vase, creating an illusion of that light and airy arrangement. With that, the inside of our card panel is complete and it truly serves as a main highlight of this design. Now that the pop up feature is finished, we can move on to working onto the card front. Now, the card front that I'm creating is very much my style: clean, simple, and elegant, with a floral arrangement paired with sentiments and a few playful splatters for an added interest. I started by stamping the bare magnolia branch towards the lower portion of my panel. For this, I used Memento black ink since I knew I'd be adding color with my positively saturated inks. You could also choose to add alcohol markers if you'd prefer that coloring method. Now, once the branches were stamped, I returned the panel to my ultra sticky mat and prepared to add ink blending using the coordinating stencils. To protect the edges and prevent any unwanted ink from spreading, I carefully covered them with post it notes. For the branches itself, I used 2 shades of browns, which is mocha and cappuccino, to add depth and dimension. For the leaves, I used blends of green, including pine and field, which happens to be one of my favorite combinations for coloring foliage. Even with all these precautions, a small amount of brown ink did manage to stray onto the white panel, but that's an easy fix We can cover it up later with a focal point image or scattering of sequences or even some of the splatters that we plan to add in the background. These little oops moments often just add character, and well, if you don't like them, you there are so many different ways to hide those strays or any kind of mistakes that you create. They just give us an opportunity to layer something more extra and some more creative details onto your card fronts. Once the branches were fully colored and ready, it was time to add the sentiment. I started by placing the panel onto my stamp platform and arranging the flowers on top, just to get a sense of where the sentiments would sit visually. At this stage, the flowers weren't adhered, they were there just for reference to guide my placement of the sentiment. Now, for the sentiment itself, I chose the phrase that says thank you from the same Magnificent Magnolia stamp. And using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, I stamped the sentiment twice, which gives it a crisp and clean impression. Now, after the sentiment was stamped, I moved the panel into my splatter box to add some black watercolor splatters in a diagonal pattern. To protect the sentiment, I covered it with a sticky note so that no large blobs of watercolor accidentally landed on top of those words. While the panel was drying, I prepped the flowers for my card front. I added small pieces of foam tape to the backs of each of those flowers to give them dimension and help them stand out on the card front. I then carefully placed each flower on the branches, making sure not to cover the sentiment and ensuring that none of these flowers hung over the edges of the panel. These small touches really help bring the card front to life while keeping everything balanced and visually appealing. I like to use my reverse tweezers to hold all of these flowers in place so that I do not end up having any mess later. Now that our card front is ready, I decided to focus on finishing the inside of the card before attaching the front panel. To secure the pop-up feature inside the card, I applied liquid glue to one side of the pop-up card base and carefully aligned it along the fold of the main card base. It's important to make sure that the edges are snug and perfectly aligned so that the pop-up mechanism functions properly. Once that side was in place, I added glue to the remaining portion of the white card base and closed the card, pressing gently to ensure that both the panels adhered firmly together. I gave it a few moments to dry completely, then opened the card again to double check that everything was lined up and working as intended. With the pop-up mechanism secure and the inside complete, all that is left is to attach that beautifully designed card front to the finished project. Since I had already added foam tape to the flowers to give them dimension, I simply applied liquid glue to the back of the panel and carefully adhered it directly onto the card base. To add a few finishing touches, I also help cover that small bit of stray brown ink from the ink blending. I added some little sequin mixes across the card front. And just like that, our card is complete. One of my favorite things about this design that not only is it like a pop-up mechanism, but also there is plenty of space inside right below the pop-up feature to write your personal message. It's both interactive as well as functional, making it perfect for sending heartfelt notes to someone special. And there you have it, a beautiful interactive card that's both simple and full of charm. I love how the pop up feature adds a fun surprise while keeping the overall design super clean and elegant. Now, all the supplies that I used to create this card project will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome to my channel. Are you like me and always looking for ways to stretch those craft kits a little more? Today I'm playing with the new Craft Your Life project kit from Altenew and made not one but two cards using everything that came in it. The products coordinate so beautifully and it honestly makes designing super easy. You can whip up a bunch of these in different color combinations and have a whole stack of cards ready to go. It was actually my birthday earlier this month, so I decided to treat myself to some fun goodies from Altenew's latest release. I picked up two gorgeous embossing folders and the Craft Your Life project kit illuminated scenes. For today's video, I'll be focusing just on the kit and sharing the cards that I created with it. I will be using those embossing folders in an upcoming video, so definitely stay tuned for that. Alright, let's start with this adorable mini sentiments 3D embossing folder. This is actually my very first mini embossing folder by Altenew, and I was so excited to see it in my package. It features all these beautiful raised sentiments which you can use as one long strip, or well, I was thinking of embossing them on different color cardstocks and trimming them down to create cute little sentiment strips. Next up, we have the textured tiles 3D embossing folder, which has this gorgeous realistic brick-like design. I can totally see myself using this one for so many different card projects, creating beautiful backgrounds, which is perfect for adding that extra bit of texture behind some lovely floral accents. Now, let's take a look at this gorgeous Craft Your Life project kit, Illuminated Scenes. Now, we'll be using all the contents from this kit to create our cards today. Now, this kit is available as part of a subscription, but you can also grab it as one-time purchase if you prefer. Everything comes neatly packed in one of Altenew's signature storage pockets, which I absolutely love. The quality is amazing and they are perfect for keeping all your large stamps and coordinating products together. Inside the kit, the first thing I have here is this huge 6 by 8 inch stamp set, which has two stunning focal point images, one featuring a cozy living room scene and the other showcasing a lovely craft room setup. Now, there's also 10 versatile sentiments perfect for sending crafty greetings to friends and family, or even for creating your own DIY wall art or decor pieces. Now, it was not until later that I noticed that the craft room scene on the table, you also have a little stamp wheel there. How fun is that? You also get a coordinating die set that cuts out all the sentiments plus a few frame dies that can be used beyond this kit. Super versatile for all kind of projects. There is an embossing folder included too, which adds a beautiful photo frame like texture to all those die cut frames that you can create. You could use white, black, gold, silver, or any kind of metallic cardstock would look absolutely stunning on these frames. Last but not the least, there's a set of four layering stencils to help you easily add glowing highlights and soft shadows to your stamped images. They make coloring these scenes an absolute breeze. If you're someone who's into alcohol coloring or use pencil colors, these images are absolutely stunning for that too. Now, here's the little stamp wheel that I was talking about. I think this was a very clever and thoughtful idea to include the stamp wheel in this design. One thing I really love about Altenew is how thoughtful they are with their layering sets. Now, whether it's a stamp, die, or even a stencil set, they always include a layering guide. It not only shows you exactly how to layer each piece, but it also gives you some beautiful color combinations to try. For this kit, since we are working with layering stencils, the guide is super helpful. It's a great starting point for choosing your colors and textures. You can, well, follow the suggestions and create the same exact design, or just mix and match and have fun creating your own unique color palette. For today's cards, I'm starting by stamping both of the focal point images onto white cardstock panels measuring 4 by 5¼ inches. I'll begin with a living room scene stamp. Now, first, I went ahead and placed my panel onto the Altenew stamp wheel, and since this is a brand new stamp, I like to gently rub my fingers over the surface first. This helps remove some of that initial stickiness and conditions the stamp so it's ready for a nice clean impression. Now, whenever I'm coloring or ink blending on a stamped image, I almost always heat emboss it. It gives a beautiful, shiny, crisp finish, which really helps define the lines and makes the image pop compared to just plain stamping in black ink. So I started by prepping my panel with an anti-static powder tool and then stamped the image using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which gives a rich, crisp impression. If you're not planning to do any kind of heat embossing, I'd recommend you use a dye ink instead. It dries faster and won't smear or bleed when you color with alcohol markers or ink blending. Now, I like to stamp the image twice to make sure I get perfect coverage, then sprinkle on some clear embossing powder and heat set it with my heat gun. Now, since these are larger images, it's best to let your heat gun heat up fully before bringing it to the paper. And I keep moving it so you don't overmelt the powder or warp the cardstock. Since I knew I was going to create two cards, I decided to make things a little more efficient by stamping both of the images first before moving on to the embossing. I love working this way because it feels like I'm batch producing each step. It saves a lot of time, especially when you're making multiple cards with similar designs or steps. So after I stamped both of my panels, one with the living room scene and other with the craft room scene, I sprinkled clear embossing powder over both the panels at the same time, and well, that way I can clean up the embossing powder once instead of going back and forth between the stamping and embossing for each individual panel. Once I had both the panels coated with the embossing powder, I went ahead and heat set them one after the other. This batching method really helps keep the workflow smooth and organized. You're essentially finishing one step completely before moving on to the next. This technique is especially helpful if you're mass producing a bunch of different cards that follow the same basic design or have similar elements. Doing each step in batches, like all your stamping first, then embossing, then coloring, keeps the process efficient and way less messy. Well, that's what I feel. Plus, it just feels satisfying to see all your pieces come together at once. After heat embossing, I noticed that my panels had warped a little, which is totally normal when working with larger panels and heat embossing them. A simple trick to fix this is place them under a pile of books for a little while to help them flatten out. Just make sure that before you start adding any color, those panels are completely cooled down. If they're still warm, the embossing might smudge or lift, and we definitely don't want that. While my panels were cooling, I decided to work on the sentiments. I stamped two of them onto the same white cardstock and then heat embossed them using the same exact technique that I did for the main images. It's nice to use the same process because it keeps the look consistent and gives a crisp professional finish to all the stamped elements. And with that, all of our stamping and heat embossing is done. This means that we are now ready to move on to the second phase of cards, which is where the fun really begins, adding color, shading, and bringing our scenes to life. I placed my first panel, the living room scene, onto an ultra sticky mat to keep it secure while I work. I'll be using the coordinating stencils to add color to these scenes, but if you prefer, you could skip the stencils entirely and use your alcohol markers to color the images by hand. Now, this stencil pack comes with four stencils for each design, and you'll notice there are etched markings on each one of them. These markings make it super easy to align the stencils with your stamped images. So don't forget to have the stencil guide handy. It really simplifies things and ensures everything lines up perfectly. The Altenew guide also includes a list of suggested colors for each scene. I decided to have a little fun and pull out some bright, vibrant shades from my Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink collection. Now, since some of these spaces are really tiny, I used a combination of my mini ink blending brushes from Cat Scrappiness and some of my larger blending brushes to get that smooth coverage across the panel. I also used small post it notes to mask off areas of the stencil where I didn't want any color. It's a simple trick that really helps keep everything neat and prevents stray ink from landing where it shouldn't. I have to apologize in advance. My head does get in the way a little times while filming, but I really needed to make sure that the stencils were perfectly aligned to achieve a clean, even look. For this project, I used some really bright, cheerful colors to make the scenes pop and bring a fun, lively vibe to our cut. Usually, when it comes to Altenew products, I tend to gravitate towards anything floral. But this kit really caught my eye because of how versatile and unique it is. You'll see once I finish the stenciling, the way the color is applied feels almost like it's following a specific path highlighting just the center of the image and leaving the rest of the design untouched. I think it gives the cards a very artistic and modern look, something I have never tried before. Normally, I'd either leave the entire stamped image as is or color the whole thing in. But this partial coloring technique, focusing just on the center of the stamp, feels completely different and really makes the focal point pop. I absolutely love the end result. It is so striking and unique. Once I finished the first panel, I carefully peeled it off the ultra sticky mat by gently bending the mat instead of pulling the paper. This helps prevent any curling or damaging of the paper. And take a look at this absolutely stunning design. I love the colors on this, and that partial coloring technique is gorgeous. Then I moved on to the second panel with the craft room scene. I used pretty much the same color palette as the first card, but thanks to the different scene and stencil placement, both the cards ended up looking completely unique. You wouldn't even guess that I used the same exact colors for both. Even though the colors are identical, I think it's because of the placement of the highlights and shadows that's slightly different for each scene. The two cards end up looking completely unique, which is what I love about these sets. When it comes to ink blending, a few simple tricks that can make a big difference is start light and build your color gradually. It's always easier to darken than to lighten. Use gentle circular or back and forth motions for smooth transition and overlap colors slightly so that you get a gradient and that looks a lot more natural. Keep your brushes moving to avoid streaks or dark patches and make sure to use the right brush for the areas. Mini blending brushes for tiny details and the larger brushes for bigger spaces. And just like that, both our panels are ready. I absolutely love how they turned out. The colors are so vibrant, and I especially love that we have one landscape and one portrait card. Next up, we are moving on to some die cutting. I decided to create frames for both the cards using the big frame die that you see here. I cut the frames from a gorgeous glittery paper. It's gold from the new Your Paper Insider box number 13. I love the touch of sparkle on this. It adds a beautiful golden touch to both our cards. This die is a single piece die, which means it cuts out all the frames at once. So it's super quick and easy. I kept the frames together since we'll be popping them into the embossing folder next. Now, because these products are designed to coordinate, aligning the frames in the crevices of the embossing folder is super easy. It's almost like fitting puzzle pieces together. Just look at how gorgeous that texture on each of those frames are. One thing to remember is that all of these are die cut before going into the embossing folder, so it was super easy to just pull them apart and create individual frames. For the living room scene, I decided to use the largest frame. I adhered the panel to the frame using liquid glue, which keeps everything nice and secure. You could also use some foam tape to pop it up to give it that extra bit of dimension. Well, it was at this point that I couldn't help but think this wouldn't just make a beautiful card front, but it could also be a stunning home decor piece. I can totally imagine placing it somewhere in my living room, maybe over the fireplace mantle. It would look absolutely gorgeous there. For my second card, I wanted to keep things a little simpler, so I grabbed one of the thin center pieces from the frame and mounted it directly onto the panel. I did try using one of the thicker frames at first, but I felt it was overpowering my beautiful stenciled image, so the thin frame worked so much more better. If I would recreate this card, I would definitely pop up the frames using some thin strips of foam tape to give it that bit of a dimension. For this card, though, I kept it simple and adhered the frame with liquid glue directly onto the stenciled panel. With that, both our main panels are ready. We have that beautiful stenciled image and the frames. Now it's time to add the sentiments that we had earlier stamped and heat embossed. I went ahead and die cut the sentiments, and to make them a bit more sturdier and give them that little bit of extra dimension, I also die cut a few extra layers from scrap white cardstock and stacked them together. This really makes the sentiment pop on the card. I love how thick this is. Well, you could also use foam tape, but I feel stacking up sentiments gives it a really polished look. I also prepared two card bases, one from classic white cardstock and other from a soft light purple cardstock to coordinate with the colors of the stencil scenes. With all the components ready, it's finally time to assemble the cards. I first adhered the panels onto card bases and then adhered the sentiment strips using liquid glue to both of the panels. I absolutely love how this turned out. This could definitely be a decor piece. For my second card, I mounted the panel onto the card base using some foam tape. I definitely love that extra bit of dimension there. And well, just like that, our cards are complete, one landscape and one portrait. And they both have those vibrant, artistic, modern feel thanks to the stenciling and embossing techniques we used. I'm so happy with how they turned out. And that's a wrap on today's video. I absolutely love creating these cards using the illuminated scenes kit, from the stenciling and the embossing to the frames and the finishing touches. The partial coloring technique really gives the scene a modern artistic look, and pairing them with that glittery embossed frame just makes them pop. These cards are perfect for sending to a friend, giving as a gift, or even displaying as a small piece of home decor. I hope this video inspired you to try something a little different with your craft kits and explore new techniques like layering, stenciling, heat embossing, and adding dimensional frames. I will have links to all the supplies that I used to create these cards. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Well, if you're looking for a quick and easy way to mass produce your Christmas cards this season, you're absolutely in the right place. Today, I'm working with one gorgeous embossing folder that has the most beautiful holiday detail, and we are pairing it with some simple ink swiping and a delicate Merry Christmas sentiment. We are keeping the overall design clean, elegant, and consistent, but feel free to switch up your sentiment or add a little bit of bling to make it your own. Let's jump right in and start creating. Today, I'm so excited to be playing with this branching holly embossing folder from the latest And Everything Nice release by Simon Says. Now, I have to say, I'm completely in love with this folder. It creates the most exquisite impression of twisting branches adorned with those clusters of holly leaves and berries. And well, because it's 3D embossing folder, you get that gorgeous dimensional texture that instantly elevates any card design. Now, if you've watched my previous videos, you might remember that I used the same exact embossing folder to create the blackout technique, which gives the most dramatic textured details. But today we are doing something totally different. Now, instead of applying the ink to the debossed areas like we do in the blackout technique, we will be swiping our ink pad right over the raised portions of the design, and the results are so stunning. Just take a closer look at that gorgeous texture from this embossing folder. Whether you ink the raised areas or the debossed side, both give incredible results. The prickly holly leaves, those little berry clusters, and that intricate detail on the branches all come together so beautifully. Now, for my cardstock panel, I'm using a rich maroon shade. Reds and maroons always give me that cozy, nostalgic holiday feeling, from Santa's hat to those bright holly berries. Christmas just feels delightfully red and sparkly to me. That's exactly why I chose maroon for this design, and honestly, maroon and gold go together as a perfect festive pair. Now, I did spritz some water on that maroon panel before running it through the embossing folder. That's because the water will soften the fibers on the paper and it will prevent any cracking or tearing of the paper. Take a look at how gorgeous this design looks, be it the raised embossed side or the reverse debossed side. I would absolutely love using both of these sides to create gorgeous card fronts. The next step in creating this card is to gently swipe our ink pad across the raised areas of the embossed design. You can really use any ink color that complements your cardstock color, but I wanted to bring in that festive touch, so gold it is. At first, I tried the rose gold pigmenting from Altenew. It looked beautiful, but against that rich maroon background, it leaned a bit more copper than I wanted. So I switched to a metallic gold pigment ink pad and lightly swiped it over the entire panel, making sure those raised details picked up all the color. Unlike the blackout technique where I go pretty heavy handed with my ink swiping, this time I'm keeping a much lighter touch. I don't want too much ink on the flat areas of the panel, but honestly, it's not a strict rule here. You'll notice that I do get a few spots of the ink on the flatter areas, and I actually love that effect. It adds a bit of an extra sparkle and gives the panel a slightly vintage, worn in look. I continued swiping the ink pad back and forth until all those raised areas, including the holly leaves, the berries, and the branches, were beautifully coated in that metallic gold color. Once I was happy with the amount of gold on all of those raised areas, I went ahead and added a bit more interest by swiping my ink pad along the edges of the panel. Well, at this stage, I absolutely love this panel, but what's Christmas without more gold in it? Now, when you run the ink pad along the edges, it gives the border a gorgeous gold metallic finish. Now, you don't have to be super precise with this step. There are a couple of ways to do it. You can either gently press or dip the edges of the panel onto the ink pad, or you can do what I'm doing here and simply swipe the ink pad along the edges. Those slightly uneven streaks of gold around the edges actually look beautiful. They tie the whole design together and make it feel much more cohesive than leaving a plain crisp maroon border next to that beautiful rich gold texture. At this point, you can absolutely leave the panel as is. It already looks beautiful, but I wanted to add a little extra sparkle, so I bought in some of that gold distress spritz spray. Now, you could also flick on a few drops of metallic gold watercolors if you prefer, but I was going for an all over shimmer. I gave the panel a couple of light spritz and set it aside to dry while we move on to stamping and die cutting our Merry Christmas sentiment. My go to stamp and coordinating die set for almost any Christmas project has to be the Peaceful Trees set by Simon's Stamp. It's one of their older releases, but I think it came out somewhere around last year, maybe around September. But I reach out to it every single time I'm creating my holiday cards. Now, I stamped the Merry Christmas sentiment onto a piece of black cardstock using clear embossing ink and then added gold embossing powder and heat set it with my heat gun. Now, this is a very delicate sentiment, so you have to make sure that your heat gun is nice and hot before running it through the paper, and also make sure that the heat gun runs over the sentiment and is not focused just at one place. You don't want that powder to over melt because the sentiment is very delicate here. After heat setting the sentiments or any images for that fact, I like to give it a minute or so to cool down before I use the coordinating die to cut it out. I just love how clean and intricate this die cut looks, and it gives the sentiment such a polished and elegant finish. I cut out the sentiment twice using that remaining piece of black cardstock just to add some dimension to the sentiment. Now, if this was a thicker sentiment, I would probably use foam tape, but since this is such a detailed, intricate sentiment, I like to stack multiple sentiments to create that dimensional look. I stacked each layer using liquid glue. You could also use spray adhesive for this, but I feel liquid glue gives more of that wiggle room just to make sure that all of those layers align perfectly. Please excuse all the screaming in the background. My little one was clearly in a very playful mood today, and he's well at a stage where screaming is his favorite form of communication. Anyway, back to our card. My maroon panel is completely dry, and off camera, I also created a second panel using green cardstock. You'll notice in the video how different the gold shows up on the maroon versus the green. Both are gorgeous. You can really use any festive color that speaks to you. Now, I did go ahead and create another sentiment strip by stamping the Merry Christmas sentiment onto craft cardstock. I do have a bunch of these ready in my stash, but I love how the gold embossed sentiment on black cardstock really pops up against that textured background. Now, before adhering the sentiment, I like to pop up the entire embossed panel onto my card base using foam tape. It adds such a beautiful dimension to the finished card. Once the panel is in place, I used liquid glue to attach the Merry Christmas sentiment right at the top center of the card. And as always, I love using my T square ruler to make sure that everything was lined up perfectly straight. You can definitely add some bling or sequins if you'd like, but I decided to leave these cards just as they are. There's already so much shine and sparkle happening in the background, and since we are mass producing, I like to keep the steps as simple and minimal as possible. This design is super easy to recreate in different colors, and you can always switch up the sentiment. It even makes for a wonderful gift set. Imagine a bundle of 5 or 10 cards that you could gift to your loved ones. Well, here's a look at the finished card, and I absolutely love how this turned out. Off camera, I went ahead and made two more cards, one in green and one in navy blue. Let me know in the comments below which color is your favorite. Well, I had so much fun creating these cards, and they were so easy and simple to create. It took me maybe 10 minutes to create each card, and that was also because I had a lot of die cutting to do with the sentiment stacking, and also the drying time took a little more time. I had so much fun creating these cards. They came together so quickly, and honestly, the only time consuming parts were the die cutting since we stacked multiple layers of the delicate sentiment dies and while waiting for the shimmer spray to dry. Other than that, each card takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes, which makes the design perfect for mass producing. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video and found some inspiration for your own holiday crafting. All the supplies that I used will be listed in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hey, crafting crew, are you guys ready to make some Christmas cards? Because today we are skipping the boring flat cards and going full on festive spectacle. We are talking sparkle, we are talking shine, and we are talking about cards so fun your friends will be shaking it all the way to New Year's Day. Get ready for the ultimate interactive Christmas shaker card. Now, this one is packed with tons of colors, layer of stunning details, and generous helping of glitter that's absolutely perfect for the holiday season. If you want to know the secret to making this beautiful, fun, and incredibly shimmery shaker element, then grab your favorite adhesive and let's get crafting. We are diving right into the star of the show, which is this brand new Merry cover die from the latest and Everything Nice release by Simon Stamp, and it is truly designed to make a statement on your holiday cards. What I love about this particular die set is how it instantly creates that bold full panel design that will cover virtually your entire A2 size card base. The primary feature is the word Merry, rendered in that gorgeous large block letters. To start this project, I took an A2 size panel, which is 4 1 quarter by 5.5 inches, and ran it through my die cutting machine with the Merry cover die. As you can see, when I took this panel out of the die, the result is absolutely intricate. We have this beautiful, very delicate outline that defines the word Merry across the panel. Also, we have those large, chunky negative pieces, those big, bold block letters themselves. As I mentioned earlier, those big, bold letters cut by the Mary cover die are wonderful because they offer so much versatility. You certainly could use those pieces separately, maybe stack them up for dimension or adhere them directly onto a different colored background. However, for this specific design, I am going to take a slightly different approach. I will be inlaying those large block letters right back into the empty spaces of the die cut background panel. This technique gives us a completely smooth surface while allowing us to introduce color in a striking way. But before we drop those pieces back in, we absolutely must add some beautiful vibrant colors to them. Now, since they are currently plain white, I have taken all of the bold Mary letters and placed them onto my Ultra Sticky Matte by Simon. Now, this mat is a lifesaver because it holds all those pieces securely while we get messy with our inking. Now is where the fun begins. We are going to be ink blending some gorgeous saturated red and green holiday colors onto those white letters. I will be using blending brush and alternating my colors across the word. I am giving these letters a bit of an ombre look with lighter shades of those reds and pinks on top of the letter and darker red on the bottom. I'll be starting with the reds and then followed by those gorgeous green for the letters R and E. When you finally see the finished card, you'll notice that the alternating these classic holiday colors creates a beautiful rhythm and makes the entire card look significantly more festive and incredibly pleasing to the eyes. It's a small detail that makes such a huge difference on this card. For all of those beautiful, vibrant ink blending you're seeing here, I have used my Simon's Stamp Positively Saturated inks. I absolutely love these inks and they blend so beautifully to give us that rich, deep color intensity. Now, I will leave a list of all the colors that I use down in the description box below. Next, we will assemble the main framework of our card. I am taking the die cut outline frame, that is a main background piece, and adhering it on top of a standard A2 size white card panel. I'm using a fine tip liquid glue for this step as it gives me a moment to wiggle the frame into perfect alignment before it sets. However, I want to emphasize that you have a few excellent adhesive options here. If you prefer a faster application, you could certainly use a spray adhesive on the back of the die cut frame. Or for the easiest method of all, you could cut this entire panel onto an adhesive sheet. That means when you run the die through the machine, the backing of the die cut pieces are already sticky, which would absolutely make this detailed inlay work a lot more quicker and easier to manage. Now, before we get to the satisfying step of inlaying those beautifully ink blended Mary pieces, I decided that this was a perfect moment to add a sub sentiment. Placing it now ensures that it lines up perfectly with the large die cut word. And also, I didn't want to mess it up after all that beautiful inlaying. For this detail, I reached out for a wonderful new die set called the Merry Sentiment Stamp Set, which is also part of this new release. This is a compact 3 by 4 inch stamp set that includes a variety of lovely little words designed to pair flawlessly with the bold merry text that was created by the cover plate die. After looking through the options, I decided to use the word Christmas. It sits nicely right underneath the word merry and ties the whole holiday feeling together. I positioned it carefully on the panel and stamped it using my go-to VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This ink gives us the crispest, dark impression possible, ensuring that our sentiment stands out clearly against that beautiful white background. Now for the truly satisfying part. We can finally take those beautifully ink blended die cut letters and inlay them right back into their designated spots on the background panel. Look at how stunning this already looks. The crisp white frame of the cover die provides the perfect clean contrast, looking absolutely gorgeous, surrounding those vibrant colored letters. To adhere these pieces back in place, I am using small dabs of liquid glue on the back of each of those inlay places. The key here is to use a light hand. You want just enough glue to secure the pieces in place without applying so much that it oozes out from the edges when you press it down. Precision is important here to keep our final surface clean. As you place your letters, you really start to see that beautiful effect of that alternating color pattern come to life. I'm so pleased I decided to use two colors, that is, this red and green, instead of just sticking to one single shade. That deliberate alternation really lifts the entire design, giving it a depth and dynamic, festive appearance that is far more appealing to the eye. To start building our shaker element, the fun, interactive heart of this card, I needed to create a shaker well for all the shaker bits to move around. To do this, I went ahead and die cut the Mary cover die frame an additional two times using same simple white cardstock. The exact number of frames you choose to die cut really depends on the final dimension that you're looking for. Even though I'm creating an interactive card design, I personally decided to keep the overall profile on the slightly flatter side, opting for less bulk. because I plan on mailing out this card. Therefore, I'll be stacking just two additional frames to create my wells. This decision was also influenced by the choice of shaker material that I was planning to use. Instead of using chunky, large sequin mixes that require a deeper well to move properly, I will be filling my shaker with ultra fine glitter powder combined with some tiny sparkling star sequences. This combination requires less depth but provides maximum sparkle and movement to our final card. Now, the next step in the process is to add our sparkle element into the shaker wells and seal this with an acetate layer. I have an acetate sheet that is cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, which is the exact same size as the panel. Since the edges of this frame are really thin, I wanted to make sure that the acetate panel covers the entire window so that none of that glitter falls around when the recipient receives our card. To achieve a perfect balance of movement and shimmer, I'm actually using two different sparkle mixes today and placing them strategically, which is something I've never done before. First, I have this beautiful ultra fine glitter mix. I'll be adding this fine powder only inside the wells corresponding to the merry letters themselves. This fine glitter will settle beautifully and provide constant gorgeous shine and sparkle directly to those words. This is precisely why I opted not to use shimmer spray or mist on that ink blended letters earlier. If I hadn't been creating a shaker card, I would have definitely spritzed them with shimmer spray prior to inlaying them into those wells. Now, I like to use dedicated micro spoons to scoop those very precise and tiny amount of the fine glitter into each of those letter spaces. I then added the star sequences on the outer areas surrounding the letters. So when the card is finished, you will have an incredible shaker card featuring two distinct sparkle mixes that are kept separate from each other by the interior walls of our layered cardstock. This separation creates a really dynamic visual effect with fine glitter illuminating the letters and the stars dancing around the perimeter. I then went ahead and sealed this panel using my acetate sheet. I added very little glue to the frame so that none of that glue oozes out, sticking into all that beautiful glitter. After I sealed the panel, I kept something heavy on it just to make sure that everything is in place and the glue dries beautifully. While we were waiting for the adhesive to dry, I decided to work on the decorative top frame for our shaker card. Initially, I had planned on simply using another layer of the same white cardstock for the very front frame. However, this is a Christmas card and it definitely deserves all the glamour that we can give it. I quickly changed my mind and decided to bring in something more sparkly. For the front layer, I chose the gold glitter cardstock from Your Paper Insider. This is an incredible cardstock. I love how deep that shine and the non shedding sparkle it provides. It adds the perfect touch of festive luxury to this entire design. For today's specific project, we will be using only the thin outer frame piece to layer over the shaker window. Just like the previous cuts, I will be saving all those stunning glittery wood pieces for a separate spectacular projects later on. That gold frame is going to finish our card beautifully, tying everything together with that bright, absolutely shiny, Christmassy charm. With the gold glitter frame perfectly cut, we can now adhere it onto the shaker window, for which I used thin bead of liquid glue all the way around the back of that delicate frame. I'm careful to avoid all of those outer edges so that the glue doesn't squeeze out. Then I layered the sparkling frame over the sealed shaker, ensuring that the gold outlines perfectly with the die cut underneath. Don't miss to add the inner pieces of the letters R. I made sure that those tiny gold glitter pieces are put back into their respective spots within the letters, which completes the beautiful seamless look of that bold lettering. And just like that, our card is complete. Take a moment and just look at how beautiful this card turned out. The inlaid colors, the dramatic shimmer of the dual shaker elements, and the final touch of festive gold truly makes this design shine. And well, I absolutely love how this turned out. I then adhered this entire assembly onto a top folding A2 size card base using liquid glue, and just like that, our card is ready. This is an absolutely gorgeous, fully interactive, sparkle and shine Christmas shaker card. We took a simple cover die, layered it up with beautifully alternating colors, added that excitement of dual shaker elements, and finished it off with that irresistible touch of gold glitter. This card is truly a gift in itself and is sure to bring a huge smile to whoever receives it this holiday season. Now, if you enjoyed learning these inlay and shaker techniques, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And if you want to see more of festive tutorials, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. All the specific products that I used to create this card today, including the Merry cover die, the little Merry sentiment, and all of the inks, everything will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. As crafters, we always seem to have leftovers, be it extra dyes, background scraps, or little pieces left behind after trimming larger images. Today I'm going to show you how to turn one of those leftover pieces into a clean and simple Christmas card. I'll be using a few absolutely gorgeous, sparkly word die cuts that were saved from a previous project. Let's get started. Now, if you've watched some of my previous videos or if you follow me on Instagram, you already know how much I love this Merry cover plate die by Simon System. I have used it in so many different projects and I'm completely obsessed with it. This is an A2 size die that creates a gorgeous word backdrop with that beautiful frame. Now, while I may have already used up all the frames from this die, I did save some of the leftover pieces, knowing they'd be perfect for a future project. So here we are. Today I'll be using these absolutely beautiful letters cut from gold glitter cardstock by Your Paper Insider to create a bold sentiment that doubles as our focal point. You could definitely puzzle those sentiments back into an A2 size panel using the frame die cut, but I decided to do something a little different, something I usually don't do, and create a slimline card instead. Now, while I absolutely love my A2 cards, I felt that these words would really shine on a larger card. Initially, I thought of doing an A7 size, but later on, I decided that I also want these letters to be nice and straight. That's why a slimline design felt like a perfect choice for this project. Now, to create a slimline card base, you'll need a panel that measures 8.5 by 7 inches, and you have to score it at 3.5 inches. I cut my card base from this gorgeous baby pink cardstock. For my card front, I added a white panel that's cut slightly smaller than the base, allowing the soft pink border to peek through around the edges. You could absolutely take this background in so many different directions. You could either add texture with embossing, bring in some snowflake stencils, or even create a soft blended ink background. All of those options would look beautiful here. However, for this card, I really wanted to keep the design super clean and simple. I chose to stick with a plain white card base so the focus stays entirely on that stunning gold glitter cardstock spelling out the word Merry. Now, before I permanently adhere anything on the card front, I took a little extra time to arrange and rearrange the letters, making sure each one fit perfectly and lined up just straight. Now, this step really helps ensure the final design looks balanced and polished before committing everything in place. I decided to add a little bit of lift to the letters. You could definitely achieve this by adding foam tape behind each one, but since this video is all about using your die cut scraps, I took a different approach. I had a few of the same letters die cut from white cardstock, and well, I layered those underneath each of those glitter letters. This not only adds extra dimension, but it is also a great way to put those leftover die cuts to good use while keeping the card design nice and clean. Now I layered up each of those letters using some liquid glue. Now here you can see the difference between a stack letter and a single layer letter. At first glance, the difference may seem subtle, but once the card is finished, that extra layering really adds up a noticeable yet refined lift to each of those letters. I went ahead and continued building up the rest of the letters. This step didn't take very long since the letters themselves are nice and thick and they have a bold shape, which makes stacking them up really easy. I simply applied a small amount of barely art glue to each letter and layered them directly on top of one another, creating that extra bit of dimension. Well, before I move on, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below how you like to add dimension to your projects. Do you enjoy using foam tape, stacking die cuts like this one, or do you prefer keeping your cards clean, simple, and with just a single layer? Now that all of the letters are layered up, we can start adding them onto our card front. But before doing that, I wanted to stamp a sub sentiment, which is the word Christmas. So together, this will read Merry Christmas. Now for this, I chose a stamp set which had a slightly more scripty font. For that, I'll be using the Christmas sentiment from the Peaceful Trees stamp set. Now, since the stamp already includes the word merry, we will need to do a bit of masking here. You could also go the stamp surgery route and cut the word merry off entirely, but I personally like keeping the stamps intact and simply masking out the part that we don't need. Now, normally I would reach out for my Altenew stamp wheel for any kind of stamping, but because this is a larger panel, I decided to pull out my Tim Holtz stamp platform. Now, this is an older one, and I'm not sure if it's still available, but it's one of my favorites and something I use time and time again. Now, coming back to the card, I placed my panel onto the stamp platform and added the grid transparency sheet on top to help with the alignment of the sentiment. From there, I arranged the word Merry and positioned my Merry Christmas stamp exactly where I wanted it to be before moving on to the stamping. I masked off the word Merry using some post it tape and then stamped just the word Christmas with VersaFine Onyx blacking. Now, it's very important to remove your masking tape or any kind of mask that you've used before stamping your sentiment onto your card panel. I was really happy with the placement of the sentiment and absolutely love how elegant and beautiful this font looks on the card. Now that the sub sentiment is in place, all that's left to do is arrange each of those die cut letters onto the panel. To give the card a bit more drama and visual interest, I decided to deviate from placing the letters in a perfectly straight line. Instead, I staggered them slightly, which creates a playful dynamic effect across the card front. Now, this little shift in alignment adds movement to the design and makes the sentiment feel more lively and engaging. As I glued each letter in place, I took care to keep them secure while maintaining that subtle variation in the positions. The layering combined with that slight stagger really helps the letters stand out, giving the card a dimensional and eye catching look without feeling too busy. It's a simple trick, but it makes a big difference in the overall impact of the design. Again, I like to use reverse tweezers to hold each of those letters because that gives a lot more control while I place them on my card front. And I'll again use my barely art glue for each of those letters. If you want to add more dimension, you could definitely go on and add foam tape to each of those letters individually. I added foam tape to the back of the panel and adhered it to my slimline card base, giving it a nice lift and dimension. Even though I wanted to keep this card super clean and simple, I felt it still needed a bit of sparkle to really bring it to life. Now, instead of using the usual gems and sequences, I reached out for the Sparkling Poinsettia Sprinkle Mix by Cat Scrappiness. These are very subtle floral sequences, not overly bold, but they do add just the right touch of festive shimmer to your card. Now, these are actually clay sequences, so they won't add any shine or sparkle, but yes, they do add that festive magic to your card front. Now, I placed one poinsettia on each of those letters, which adds that delicate sparkle without overwhelming the design. And with that final touch, our card is complete. It's sweet, elegant, and festive, with just the right amount of shine to make it special. I love that this card was almost entirely made from leftover die cuts and a very few simple supplies. We just added a simple sentiment and some beautiful poinsettias on each of those letters. I love how that bold glitter letters really pop against the white backgrounds, and those subtle poinsettia sequences just add the right touch of sparkle and dimension to our card. Well, I did add three dots at the end of the word Christmas, which I thought completed the card. Now, this project is a great reminder that even small scraps and leftover pieces can be transformed into something beautiful and special. I hope this inspires you to look at your own die cut scraps in new way and create something magical for the holidays. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching today's video. I will leave links to all the supplies that I used to create this card project. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.